Fuck! I swear I had that on. I'm going crazy. I'm losing my mind. Hello, Galco. Hello, Phantom. Hello, Baxgroup. Hello, Elysia. Lots of people today. But yes, some people, if you, for some reason, are watching my stream on full screen, you may notice that it's slightly lower quality because I've knocked it down to downscaled to 720p so that it... Oh, I knew I forgot something. Apart from the usual. Right there. Bam. But yes. So yeah, streaming in lower quality, which hopefully will mean less technical issues, maybe? I don't know. I tried asking people about the sound quality issues, but that just seems to be a thing on Twitch's end, to be honest. You know who doesn't get all these issues? Partners. But anyway, yeah, you probably won't notice it if you're just watching Twitch normally, or on especially on your phone. But yeah, also, exciting news! Big exciting news, everyone. Pay attention, pay attention. I am happy to announce that the Kuro 1.0 model is officially in production. Happy Packer has gotten started on it. She doesn't even know how long it'll take. She's trying a new workflow, so it'll be done when it's done. But she has got started. She showed me her very early. It was a very, very early, like, rough drafts on it. So yeah, very exciting. After all these delays, it is finally getting ready. But yeah, that's about it for general updates and announcements. So let us go to teaching you about some Shadowverse. Alright, I'm trying. It is money. But you can get like pretty good pre-built models now. I saw someone made a really highly customizable one that you can like try out with like a low budget version. Yeah, so the premise of today's stream is a bit of a an experiment because I've done yeah, it's the one I retweeted fairly recently. So obviously it's a more I am not going to teach you D-Ramp. Why? Because Cronos is a bad card. Okay, I'm gonna since you brought it up, I will explain to you why you should not fall into the trap that is Cronos. So you want neutral, follower, legendary, rotation. Well, maybe you should download Shadowverse. So where's Cronos Time Tuner? This card was introduced in the mini expansion for Resurgent Legends, and a lot of people keep playing him, and all of those people lose. You wanna know why? Because it is a trap. This is a card that you think is overpowered, but is actually extremely situational. Note that I said extremely situational, not bad. There are decks where you want to put Cronos in. There are decks that can afford to slot him in to tech against certain opponents, and some decks where he is indeed a powerful option. Now, here's why Cronos is kind of like the allure of Cronos is this effect, this evolve effect. Because he's a 3 play point 3/3, which is fine. That's your average 3/3 blocker stats, whatever. But you play him for but you can play so many other 3/3s for that. But you play him for this evolve effect. Evolve. Give the enemy leader the following effect. At the start of your next turn, lose 1 play point or then remove this effect. So this hits your opponent with an effect that literally de-ramps their play points. It fully removes a play point. When I first saw this card, I thought it was just like, oh, it takes out a play point for that turn. They've done these kind of effects before. But no, it literally removes a whole play point. It's not for a one-turn deal. It literally slows them down for the entire game. And that sounds really powerful. But then you realize, the thing is, what it doesn't do is it doesn't affect the board or push you towards any kind of win condition in any way. All it does is slow your opponent's play points down. And in this meta, in this level of Shadowverse power levels, an evolve effect that doesn't give you value on the board or value in your hand or just progress you towards your win condition is almost a waste of your own turn. So you are paying a very high cost for slowing your opponent down, and usually with a lot of decks people are running, especially a lot of decks in the current meta these days, this won't really hurt them. Like, they'll either just keep hitting you with a board that you haven't been able to stop because you've played an vanilla Evo for your Evos. You're playing Lucius is really. I need to like catch up with my Proud quests on Relink so I can get there. But like, there is times when it is good to play Cronos and use his Evo effect, like against certain decks and at certain points. This is a good card. Thank you. Sorry, I'm not sure I get that name right. Unspoiled Art TV. Unspoiled Dart? V? But anyway, yeah, like, the important times to play this is if on specific turns that are going to stop your opponent from playing their big splashy card that will possibly screw you over or kill you. So if your opponent, and again, if your opponent doesn't have a particularly developed board that you don't need to worry about clearing. Like, if you just need to buy time for a turn, then, and you're not like losing too much on board from it, and you are a deck that mostly just waits until later, then Cronos can be good. Like, this is a good example in like more control-oriented Haven decks, but even though a lot of them tend to overplay Cronos, you usually only really want to play Cronos before turn 10, because of course he has a very strong effect when you play him on turn 10. You usually only play him, use his Evo effect once maximum. I've seen a lot of people play this card turn after turn. They Evo him like 2 turns in a row, very rarely 3 turns in a row, especially if you're going first, because then you don't have that many Evo points. But they'll like evolve him, they'll like go, okay, it's turn 4, I'll evolve Cronos and take out one of my opponent's followers. And then turn 5, I'll evolve another Cronos and take out another opponent's follower. And you'll think, right, I've stalled my opponent's play points progression by 2 turns. This is clearly a good thing. And then you realize, hang on, my opponent has been hitting me in the face with their entire turn, or just continuing to accelerate their own win con, whilst I've been doing effectively nothing, whilst I've just been spinning my wheels by playing an evolving Cronos and maybe 1 or 2 other cheap followers on the side. But like, on turn 10, the effect is very powerful because, of course, he recovers all of your play points, so he refunds that. He recovers all of your Evo points, which obviously you probably want at turn 10, because you've probably used them all up at this point. And the effect deramps your opponent by 3 rather than 1, which means if your opponent is also playing a deck that's very... This, again, is going to be situational. It's more going to be reliant on... if your opponent is relying on a big splashy play to kill you on turn 10, because this will knock them down to 7, which is quite nasty. But obviously, so it's very good against like Big Dragon, though not that many people play Big Dragon really. but not so very useful against a lot of other the thing is, it's still not very useful against most common decks, but at least the refundable play points is probably the big part of why you'd play Cronos on turn 10, because you can play like 7 cost worth of stuff, then play Cronos, and then you have another 10 play points. That recovers all your play points. That's another 10 play points to play with. But anyway, none of the decks I'm going to be talking about today use Cronos in any way, and all of them probably kick Cronos in his teeth. So, but that was just brought up. So we're going to start in order with the deck I've probably been playing the most of, and probably is like the easiest deck to play, which is Midrange Shadowcraft. This is the Midrange Shadowcraft list I use. I'll go through all the cards, because the idea behind Midrange Shadowcraft is you just play good cards every turn. It is a deck that's like, why would I play cards that are not good? I will simply play good cards. There's no like overarching theme apart from a general sense of aggression, but they're all good value cards enabled by the most valuable bug lady of all time, Zebet, who's just, what if you had a shitload of bodies in one card? But we'll get to her later. We'll get back to her later. Yeah, it is simply every card in this deck is independently a strong card, except for Night Terrors. Night Terrors depends on you having anything on board, but then it's very easy when you've got a load of cards that produce shadows. But every single other card is just a good solid card, and you just keep playing about like 1 or 2 good cards every turn until you win. It doesn't have much in the way of burst damage, but it does wear down opponents' ears. So its lack of burst damage does lead it to a few weaknesses, which I'll get to later. So now we'll just kind of like go through all the cards kind of like just in cost order, and kind of just like explain them through. And so we start with, this is one of the most solid 1-drops in Shadowcraft ever since its introduction, which is the Loyal Ghost Pup. So 1 play point, 1/1 with last words. At the start of your next turn, summon a ghost. That's the most important thing. The enhance is kind of situational. You usually don't want to, it's usually not going to come into play, but it can. It's still a pretty solid, you can still make use of it, especially in this deck. But yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's a 1/1 body, and then you get a ghost on your next turn, so even if so it's just kind of annoying for your opponent. The ghost gives you good, not only just a good thing to trade with, but also a good thing to spend to like sacrifice to various effects. And the enhance 8, so you can play it for 8 play points as well. Summons 2 malicious ghosts. They're mostly just and gives them storm. So it's basically you get 2 for 2 storms, and you can, if you have evo points left, you can evo 1, and you get that's like 10 damage for 8 play points. In this kind of deck, that's pretty good. That's a good finisher. Like, it's not ideal. You probably want to finish the game before you reach 8 play points, but if it has you get that far and you've got the play points and it kills, then that's pretty good. So it's not going to be, you're not going to play it that much, but you're going to appreciate the enhance being there when it does. Next, another fairly standard Shadowcraft card that's kind of like in a lot of Shadowcraft decks, which is just Night Terrors. It's one of your main sources of card draw, because it's just give -0, -5 to an allied follower, draw 2 cards. So it's basically, it is kind of like a weird twist on the sacrifice an allied follower, draw 2 cards that's in a lot of stuff, a lot of decks really. Well, spin in Bloodcraft and Shadowcraft really, mostly. And yeah, it just does that by reducing the defense of the card rather than straight up destroying it. So if you do have a particularly, it doesn't really come up in this deck because not that many cards in the deck have more than 6 defense, 6 or more defense. So you're usually just you play this on, as I said, a cheap follower, like a loyal ghost pup who's sitting around, or one of your ghosts that it spawned, or whatever. There's lots of things you just generally don't care about sticking on the board. And it's just like, oh, I might as well draw some cards. Hellfire Strike is one of your just handy necromancy spells. It's a 1 play point spell that deals 2 damage to your enemy leader, and if you have 4 shadows, it deals necromancy 4, deal 2 damage to all enemy followers. So it's basically just cheap, efficient, burns your opponent's face, and if you have the necromancy for it, clears their board for a very efficient cost. So it helps with being aggressive because it can just remove bodies on the board whilst letting you just push face with your followers. You usually want to save these for when you have the shadows to spare for them, unless you're killing them with it. It's usually not worth, like, unless you really need to feel like you need to race your opponent, it's not that much usually worth playing them without using them as a board clear. And like, if you're just playing it just for the 2 damage to your face. But if you know you're against an opponent who's not going to play that many cards, doesn't have as much healing as you'd expect, then you can be a bit more liberal with it. But usually you want to hold it for board clears and swings for the kill. And it's like, also, it's not a bad card to just play if you need to get a card out of your hand. Now here's a more complicated one. This one is Poisoned Apple of Revival. It's another Resurgent Legends card. And this card is so versatile. It does 3 things really, but you can, in this deck particular, like in a lot of decks this card is in, it's used primarily for the first effect when you target a Shadowcraft follower. So if you select an allied follower, if it's a Shadowcraft follower, it gives it last words, summon a copy of itself. And if it's a neutral follower, it gives it last words, draw 2 cards. So that's the main effect you play it for. And then if you've had 5 allied cards with last words when they've destroyed this match, it gives it Rush and Bane, which is also very useful. But yeah, like in this deck, in a lot of Shadowcraft decks that run this card, which is most of them, I think, like Burial Rite and was like Helios and Last Word Shadow both play this primarily for its first effect, where it's like gets you more copies of a powerful follower, whether that's Helios or no, it's Helio or Alice. Whereas this deck, you can use it for either, depending on the situation. So you make a very versatile selection. It's like, okay, if you have a neutral follower in play, which you can get, there are quite a few of in this deck. There's there's a few that are particularly very persistent. You can be like, okay, I need to draw cards, or if you have a follower that's very valuable to make copies of, whether that's a Dial or Underworld Lieutenant or one of the Babs tokens. That's also very good. And also just the Russian Bane effect, because this deck gets 5 whilst this deck isn't a Last Words deck, it does hit 5 Last Words pretty quickly. It has a lot of Last Words in the deck. So getting to that Russian Bane effect on it as well is also quite feasible. So it's just generally really solid, and you kind of have to it's probably the most tricky card in the deck, but usually if you play it and it does, the only thing you have to make sure is it is a very powerful Last Words it gives, and you don't want to risk it getting wasted by either having the card get transformed or banished. So you do kind of want to make sure when you play it, unless you know your opponent is running a deck that doesn't run like transform or banish effects, you want to make sure that Last Words triggers, because otherwise you get absolutely screwed if you like play this on a follower for either effect, and then your opponent just banishes the follower because they're playing Havencraft or whatever. So if you're up against Havencraft and Forestcraft are the main 2 decks that will screw you over in when you play this card, like, and don't instantly get its effect, like proc the last words on it. So that's what I'd say you have to be careful. You have to make sure you put this on. It's always best to put this effect on something that you are having died that turn before it gets to your opponent's turn, because if you get banished, it's such a loss of tempo. But anyway, the next card is a standard card for rally decks. It is Mikhail. Mikhail is a 2-play.3/1 with Rush, which is okay, it's fine. But obviously, everyone who plays Shadowverse knows this guy because he's in a lot of decks. Any deck that plays a decent amount of followers plays Mikhail. Because Invocation, which means at the start of your turn, if you've reached the invocation costs, he enters play from your deck, but only one copy of him. You don't get all of the Mikhails in your deck. You only get one Mikhail maximum a turn. And his Invoke also means he heals you, and it's a fairly easy condition, especially in this deck where you're playing lots of cards. A lot of your cards summon ghosts, which also increases your rally count. So rally is the amount of followers that have entered play under your control this game. So getting to rally 10 is very fast for this deck. So it's just a good card. He then, because he gets you on he comes on the board, he heals you up, he trades for something useful. He's a good target for Poisoned Apple of Revival, so you can get the 2 cards off him, and also you can give him Bane from that, which is quite useful. So just, again, solid card for any kind of mid-range rally-oriented like deck that plays enough followers to hit that 10 rally pretty frequently. As I said, heals you, keeps you alive. Just a nice card. He's a nice card. He's a good lad, that Mikhail. And next we're on to another just good card in a lot of mid-range decks. There's Twofold Grace. It is a 2-play-point spell. It's a choose spell. It means you get to choose one of either 2 or even 3 or 4 options for it. In this case, it's 2. So if you have neither of the 2 cards it can summon in play, you pick one of them and you summon one of them. And what are the 2 follows? You have a choice between... Hang on, we can do a better look here. You have a choice between Amaterasu and Tsukiyomi. Amaterasu is a ward with last words, restore 1 defense to your leader, and Tsukiyomi is a rush with last words, deal 1 damage to the enemy leader. And they also have this kind of same mirrored effect on them, where they after they die, the turn after your next turn, they summon the other one. So once you've played Twofold Grace once, assuming they don't get banished or transformed or whatever, they will keep swapping between the 2, summoning back every other turn after they're destroyed. So again, it's just another solid value card that keeps coming back. You does also notice that whilst the effect doesn't stack, it only stacks for each one. So you can have the effect from Amaterasu and the effect from Tsukiyomi on you at the same time because they are 2 different effects. But so you can kind of space that out. But like, if you have an Amaterasu on the board, and Amaterasu dies, and then another Amaterasu dies because you play another Twofold Grace after she's died, then you're not going to get the effect because the effect doesn't stack. But you can have Tsukiyomi and Amaterasu's effect stack, so you can have the 2 alternate effects stacking, but not the same. The other effect is if one of them is already in play, instead of summoning one, the spell will heal you for 2, recover 1 evo point and 1 play point. So this is also pretty good, but you have to kind of remember it happens. I've done this, I've seen loads of people do this. Sometimes you're like, okay, I could use another Tsukiyomi to trade with this guy, and then that'll clear their ward, and I'll win the game. And then you play it, and you don't get anything on the board, and you're like, ah, shit, I forgot I can't have more than one. I can't play the spell whilst one's already on the board. or I don't get the follower. But you do get an Evo point back, and this is kind of like the primary Evo point recovery, one of the primary Evo point recovery in the deck. And again, healing, because it is effective. Whilst it costs 2, it refunds 1 play point, so it's effectively a 1 play point spell when they're already there, but not really, because, you know, it's a refund, so if you're only at 1 play point, you can't play it. But using it for Evo point recovery is pretty good. Again, you kind of have to judge the situation, again, for whichever one you want to remove, whichever of the 2 you want to have on the board, whether you want a ward to protect your followers or a rush to trade something out. Like, if you're ever in doubt, as basically, do you have, basically, you can ask yourself the simple question, is there something on my opponent's board that Tsukiyomi can kill? Or helps me kill? If yes, play it as Tsukiyomi. If no, play it as Amaterasu to defend your other followers. Like, there are kind of some, like, long-term planning situations where you can be like, if I play Tsukiyomi now, that will mean I do more damage over the course of the game. But, again, that's kind of at a risk. And, like, if you play, like, have Amaterasu on 2 and your opponent doesn't have a board, and then when it gets to, and then your opponent deals with that, and then you play Tsukiyomi, and then it summons Tsukiyomi on 4, then you're like, okay, that's better. You get your free Tsukiyomi on 4, then you get to bump off the part of your own opponent's board, and it's just generally pretty useful. So again, very a neutral target for Poisoned Apple Revival if you need some cards. Of course, it'll give them Rush and Bane, so even if you don't have, you can use it to turn Amaterasu into a card that can actually clear something rather than just sitting there being a ward. And just generally a solid 2-play, because it's a 2-play point 2/2 with Rush or Ward, which is just really solid. So again, just a good card. And then we have Fallen Sergeant. Fallen Sergeant only really makes sense in the context of another card in there, because you only got 1 copy of the deck, because it's basically just I need to fill out the curve. I'll put 1 or 2 of these guys in, because it's still a 2.22, and it's got a Last Words that tutors another powerful card, which we'll get to in a bit. But he's pretty much just a 2-play point 2/2 that there's only 1 other condemned card in the deck. Like, well, 1 other different condemned card. We won 3 copies. It runs 3 copies of it because it is a good card. But Fallen Sergeant's main existence is just like, I could do with 1 more 2-play point card to have in the deck, and it's very useful to just have an extra guaranteed pull of this particular card that we'll come up to in a bit. It's nice lad over here. Maybe we'll do the animated ones whilst we have them. Blossom Beauty is another very simple card. It's a 2-play point 2/1, so a bit lower on the stats, but it does have Fanfare Draw a card. And Necromancy 4, so if you got 4, so you spend 4 shadows to auto evo, and it gets full auto evo stats, so that's quite nice. As I said, this card is simple, it's whatever, it is just a 2-play point follow body that draws you a card, really. It's aggressively statted for a card that cycles like this, which is nice, and the Necromancy is a kind of nice upside. There are better Necromancy effects in the deck, but it's still pretty good. It's just a solid card, just another case of just playing a good card, because it cycles itself, it keeps you at card advantage. It's just good tempo without any real cost. And I said, an auto evo there's no like evo synergy in the deck, but an auto evo is still nice. It still means you have a 4/3 rush for 2 play points, and it draws you a card. Because yeah, that's the thing, the card draw is always active. It's not conditional on Necromancy. Necromancy only evolves it. So a nice simple card. Also, she's cute. Being cute also counts for a lot. And another just good card. It's Slayer of the Dead. He's a bit of a more complicated one, but he is a fairly simple one. Ish, kind of. That doesn't make any sense, but hopefully it will by the time I've finished explaining it. So, Slayer of the Dead is a 2-play point 2/2, with his fanfare being that if any other allied follower is in play, you destroy that, summon a ghost, and draw a card. And he also has a second fanfare, which is if you have Necromancy 4, he gains the ability to evolve for 0 Evo points, which is nice. And then his evolve is the same. He has an evolve effect that is the same as his fanfare, which is destroy a follower, destroy another allied follower, summon a ghost, draw a card. So again, this is another way of making use of followers you don't need, like small bodies or stuff, just stuff like an existing ghost on the board, or a loyal ghost pup, or a Amaterasu or Tsukiyomi, or a Michael you don't need, or just anything really, just to keep cards flowing, because you can play him, you kill a follower, you get a ghost, then you hit your opponent's face with the ghost, and then you evolve him and you sacrifice the ghost, and then that summons another ghost that you hit your opponent's face with. So you've done 2 damage to your opponent's face, and you've drawn 2 cards. And if you've spent the Necromancy, you haven't spent any Evo points, and you've got a 4/4 Evoed follower on the board. So generally, good value, good card. Man does his work. If you're unfamiliar with Shadowverse Necromancy, by the way, a ghost is a 1/1 storm that, when it leaves play or at the end of your turn, banishes itself, so it doesn't add to your shadows or whatever. Which also comes up, but does come up into relevance of Ghastly Banishment, which is a 2 play point spell that summons 2 ghosts. If you play it on Enhanced 7, at the start of your opponent's next turn, deal X damage to all enemies, where X equals half the number of allied followers banished this match. Right up. Most of the time, you will just play this as 2 play points, summon 2 ghosts, but sometimes it can be a finisher, which makes it real good. Or just a very decently powerful board clear. Like, this card is probably the most flexible you can if you want to, say, run a more Fallen Silence for Bodies, or another Blossom Beauty, or just any other additional card. This is a card you can probably cut, but you probably only want to cut it for a 2 play point card that's still somewhat aggressive. So yeah, usually you just play this to summon 2 ghosts, but you can it can still be played on Enhanced 7 just to get that final reach across, because it's damage to all enemies, so it goes past. So even if the ghosts can't get past a large enemy wards, then it can still get there. So it's just more damage in the deck, really. So not a particularly exciting card, but can be pretty good, especially when you consider another card that we'll come to later, because it's later in the deck. But we'll get to Soul Extraction later. But the Enhanced still can do a decent amount of damage. You do summon a decent amount of ghosts, not as many ghosts as a deck built around summoning ghosts does, but still a decent amount, partially because of Lucius, Traveled Trainer. He's a 3 play point 3/3 with Bane, so he's already off to a good start. That's already a solid value for the stats. And he's like probably a card that does a lot of things, but only depending. But the thing he does are very relevant on the deck you're playing and the deck your opponent is playing. So whilst you see fanfare does a lot of stuff, for in this particular case, the only fanfare we care about is the one that says if your deck is Shadowcraft or Portalcraft, summon 2 ghosts, and that's fine. That's 2 1/1 storms for a turn. So yeah, that's it. That you play him for 3 and you summon 2 1/1 ghosts. But he also has evolve effects, and all his so his fanfare effects all depend on your class, and his evo effects all depend on the opponent's class. This is where all of them are kind of relevant, because it depends on the cards. So his value is going to massively shift depending on your opponent, depending on what kinds of decks you're going to play. You're playing against. So like, whether or not evolving Lucius is worth it depends highly on who you're playing against. So if you're playing against Forestcraft or Runecraft, recover 2 player points. That's all right. That's fine. Is like, you play if you use that, if you can use it, if you can use that effect well on that turn, then yeah. But otherwise, again, very situational. Depends what cards you have in hand, really. If you have, like, if you want to play Lucius, and evoing helps you trade out something, and then you get to play more board advantage from the play point refund. That's pretty good. It doesn't really make, not an effect that really like affects your opponent much, as it just affects the decisions you make. Probably the best effect for, one of the two best effects for this deck is the one for if your opponent is Shadowcraft or Portalcraft, where you summon 2 ancient artifacts, which are 1/1/3/1 rush, 1 play point, 3/1 rushes. And that's great. That's aggressive bodies. You can trade with them, you can just sit them on the board, and your opponent has to go like, oh, there's these 2 more bodies I have to deal with. I don't have any board clear. They're gonna hit me in the face. So that's great. That's a great effect for that one. It's usually pretty worth, because again, they're not ghosts, so they stick around, and they, worst case, they get to be additional shadows, and they're just something your opponent has to deal with. Because that's just a lot of bodies for an Evo, because he gets full Evo stats. And if it's Swordcraft or Dragoncraft, destroy an enemy amulet. Depending on the meta, this effect is either very useful or very bad. Currently, it's useless. No, like, meta, no Swordcraft or Dragoncraft deck that anyone currently plays in rotation runs any artifacts that you want to, any amulets that you want to blow up. The only amulet that's worth blowing up in the entire meta is Roland's, the Durandal, but this deck has no targeted effects whatsoever for enemy followers, so it does not give a shit about Durandal in the slightest. Nothing it does targets the enemy's face, nothing it does targets enemy followers. It does not give a shit. So if your opponent is Swordcraft or Dragoncraft, hopefully you never have a reason to evolve Lucius, because his evolve effect does basically nothing. Because the only amulet Dragoncraft plays are all stuff with last words that they're very happy for you to pop instantly anyway. Any amulets you can destroy with Lucius against Dragoncraft will only benefit your opponent, because they're all countdown amulets. So against Swordcraft or Dragoncraft, just don't evolve Lucius. It's not going to help you in any way, shape, or form. Maybe in the next set, there will be they will be running amulets that you care about. Not in this deck, not in this meta. And the last one, if it's Bloodcraft or Havencraft, just deal 4 damage to the enemy leader. That's just good. That's just good value. That's a lot of damage for a single Evo. And again, this is a very aggressive deck. And Haven's probably going to be healing out their ass anyway. Haven's a rough matchup for this deck. But Lucius can get you there with 4 damage. And it also means this deck, if your opponent's playing like Wrathblood, or any of the kind of like, any kind of self-ping bloods, it's just pretty brutal. Like, even Milnard Blood. Milnard doesn't actually have a lot of healing until Milnard is online, so that 4 damage is really serious to them. So yeah, this makes this deck pretty heavily favored against Bloodcraft, because if they're Wrath, he usually comes out just at the time when they've just been pinging themselves, but they've only just activated Wrath, so their HP is pretty low, so he can usually help you get a kill off. So that's quite powerful. And yeah, against Havencraft again, when you play, if you play a Lucius, you could kind of get that 4 damage in before they start going like completely nuts and healing a shitload every turn. So he's very strong there. Oh. So yeah. So that's the kind of, that take a while, because yeah, there's lots of effects to go through and it's very situational. But the important thing is he's just a 3 play point, 3/3 Bane that summons 2 ghosts, and that's fine. That's good. That's all you need for him to be a good card. Hi, lad. Next is another just good card. So this is Underworld Lieutenant. This is the only condemned card in the deck, which means when Fallen Sergeant dies, when the triggers his last words. He's at the start of your next turn. He's going to fetch one of your underworld lieutenants because it's the only other condemned follower in the deck. So he's a fourth play point 3/3 with fanfare. Summon a Spartoid soldier. Again, I can use this button rather, which is a 3 play point 1/4 with ward and gains last words. So this is just, and he's also got last words deal 2 damage to enemy leader. So he's both aggressive and defensive because he puts a decent amount of stats on the board. Because he also summons another Spartoid soldier on when he evolves. So he's one of the more powerful evolve effects in the deck. So he's just a solid card, solid amount of stats, putting he puts a ward with a fat ass in play that makes it 4 defense is a very high, is a very good number because a lot of effects and common stuff in the game deals 3 damage to followers. So you think Michael is a 3/1. That's a very common card. A lot of cheap efficient removal deals like the 2 or 3 damage. So having a follower with 4 defense is pretty damn good as a annoying body. And he gives you 2 shadows on the Spartoid soldiers. Give you a bunch of shadows on last words as well. So they increase your last words and count pretty quickly for an evolved underworld lieutenant is 3 last words on his own. So that's most of the way to getting this your 5 last words done for Poisoned Apple Revival. So that's real good. And yeah, it's just a good story because a lot of the time if you play this guy on turn 4, you evolve him for 2 Spartoid soldiers. He'll probably against a lot of decks, he just sticks around, and then he gets to dome your opponent for 5. Sorry, I burped. Dome your opponent for 5 because your opponent hasn't been able to get through 2 1/4 wards, which it's just a really annoying board for your opponent to get through. And even if they do kill him, there's 2 damage they take. Thank you, though. So again, he's just a good card. This deck is just about playing good cards every turn until we win. And a lot of these good cards just deal damage. So you're not doing a lot of burst damage per turn, but you are basically doing damage every turn. Yeah, what do you know, Phantom? Now we get to one of the big fantasy cards in the deck. Another big, just a good card. This is a Dial, Ebony Dancer. She was introduced in the mini expansion. And she's another card that's got a bit of variance, but it's not that complicated despite the many things you can do. So, on the base level, she's a 5 play point, 4/4, so initially not great stats. But with last words, deal 2 damage to all enemies, so that's their entire board and their face. Lovely. She also, when you play her for 5, summons a Ivory Dancer, which is her equivalent Havencraft card. So does not count as... Yeah, so this is no. If you play Poisoned Apple Revival... Thank you for the follow, Reputable Demu. I think that's how you say it. But yeah, it's an important thing. One random little tool of the deck is if you play Poisoned Apple Revival on a deck, neither of these 2 effects activate because she is neither a Shadowcraft nor a neutral follower. She is a Havencraft follower. She will get Rush or Bane, and Bane if you got those 5 last words, but she will not summon a copy of herself, and she will not draw you cards. So she's a bad target. She's just restores 2 defense to all allies, which is nice. But she's also a 4/4, so if you play her on 5, you get 8/8 worth of stats. That's good. You get 8/8 worth of stats, it deals 2 damage to the enemy board, and heals you for 2. That's good. But also, you may notice she has a Crystallize effect. So Crystallize, you can play her for 2 play points, to player as an amulet with countdown 2, which has last words, summons a dial Ebony Dancer. So it doesn't summon a deck, but it does summon a dial for only 2 play points on a fairly short delay. So that's efficient. This is one of your going second, so when you can evo on 4, because evolved is very important about this card. The important thing is, when evolved, at the end of your turn, as long as she's on the board, she will also deal 2 damage to all enemies as well. So, and she gets full stats, so she's a 6/6. So that makes her one of the best evolved targets in the deck, because she 2 damage to the entire enemy board and their face, and putting a threatening 6/6 and having this big threatening 6/6 body that's going to deal 2 damage to their face and board as well when they kill it. That's just good. That's just solid. As I said, if you've played her on her own, played her for the Crystallize, you've only played 2 play points. It's turn 4. You've got all your play points. You've got this 4/4 body that you can evolve to a really powerful effect, and you can play whatever. You can play Underworld Lieutenant on side. He's like, you can either evolve the Underworld Lieutenant or evolve a dial. Just good value. And as I said, if you play it on 5, you get the Adept body as well. You can, if you want, if you're in a bad space and you need healing, Adept being the mirror, because she's the white swan and the black swan dancer. See, that's how that works. She restores 2 defense to all allies, so that can be, you can make use of that, but most of the time you won't. This is a very aggressive deck, so you'll usually want to race damage rather than try and heal. But sometimes healing could be useful, so sometimes you do that. What does thirsty work? So as for when to crystallize it, I would say usually, in most cases, only play for crystallize on turn 2 or 3, and only on, and it can depend on what you have in hand, if you have any other turn 2 plays, but ideally you want her to be summoned on the turn you can evolve. So that's turn 4 if you're going first, if you're going second rather, and turn 5 if you're going first. So if you're going second, you want to play this on, it's a very good option to play this crystallized on turn 2. If you're going first, then playing it crystallized on turn 3, preferably with a 1-drop alongside, but not too big if you don't have a 1-drop to play alongside, but you might want to play, depending on how the board's going. Otherwise, you generally want to save it for playing at 5, so that you get both the bodies. It just gives you it's a fairly strong turn 5 play to just play a dial, and then you have a det and a dial. You've probably whomped your opponent's board with a det's board clear effect, and you're all groovy. Maybe you, whoops, I didn't mean to. Maybe you have a Spartai soldier or just Underworld Lieutenant also sticking around, and that's pretty good. This card is kind of ties into Ghastly Banishment. It is a very similar card in some ways, because it is a 5 play points, summon 5 ghosts, summon 5 1/1 storms that banish at the end of your turn. And if you have Necromancy 5, they gain Bane, so you can use them to, this is, as I said, it's a bit versatile. You can use it for either face damage, or basically, yeah, you can either use it for face damage or board clear, or a combination of the 2. It's versatile. You can do these things. It's just a solid card. And again, because it summons 5 ghosts, that increases your banished cards count for quite high. So playing Ghastly Banishment after you've played a Soul Extraction on turn 5, and it's enhanced, so you can do decent damage. Again, you're not going to have a massive number on Ghastly Banishment. It's not going to go up to 8 or whatever, but still 4 or 5 damage at most is still pretty solid. Especially since that's all enemies, so that's all their followers and their face, and importantly, it's at the start of your opponent's turn. So if your opponent has any of the effects that grant them a damage shield for a turn, an effect damage shield for a turn, those always run out before their turn starts again. So it'll bypass that, which is very powerful. Again, situationally very powerful, but usually you'll only play this. Most cases, if you're unsure, it's fine to just play this as the 2 play point summon 2 ghosts. And finally, the Pièce de Resistance. The ultimate card of value. Zebet, Spreading Corruption. She is a 6 play point 4/4 with which is kind of low stats, but she's a fan fire. Choose summon 2 of the following cards: a Ravening Beetle, a Ruthless Mantis, or a Reeling Shadow. And we'll get to those in a second. But we'll know that she also has an enhanced 8, so you can play on her 8 if the game's dragging on a bit. But she gains ward, you recover 2 Evo points, so it said if the game's dragging on a bit. I haven't had any fucking fizzy drinks, thank you very much. I have had coffee and water. I'm just talking a lot. But yeah, so it's making me hiccup. But yeah, it's so enhanced. So gain ward and following means recover 2 Evo points, and the next time it takes damage, reduce that damage to 1. It's lost my train of thought. Yeah, so that's just like good way to like, because of course she also summons two of the bugs on Evo, so you almost never want to play this card when you don't have Evo points. So the enhanced set kind of like means if the game's dragging on a bit and you draw her later once you've spent all your Evo points, you can still play her and use her, and she's still useful because the ward and damage shield effect makes her quite a useful body, apart from just being like a 4/4 that you evolve into a 6/6. But anyway, so of course the star of the show really are the bugs she summons. Now first we have the main star, the one you will probably be summoning the most of in any given situation, the Ravening Beetle. It is an airstrike artifact. It is a 2/2 storm for 2. I said the cost doesn't really matter this much, but it's a 2/2 storm with last words, deal 2 damage to the enemy leader. So one of these is 4 damage. That's just good maths. So you'll almost always, especially in this deck, you almost always summon one of your choices for the summons is almost always one of these, unless you're in a bit of a bind. The next is the Ruthless Mantis. It is a 3/1 rush. With last words, restore 3 defense to your leader. So again, this is your best way of like clearing the way and also playing getting a bit defensively. It's like you might need to heal for some reason, but usually it is you're just like, I need to like this to bump off a ward so that my beetle can go face. It healed. It's just solid. Again, remember what I said? A lot of these kinds of effects, a lot of cheap efficient removal, deals 3 damage. This is why those 1-fell wards are really good. And finally, we have the Reeling Shadowfly. This is another really solid one. It is a 1/3 Bane, and it has an end of turn effect, where at the end of your turn, you draw a card. That always happens if this is on the field. And if you have the shadows for it, you perform Necromancy 6, give -2/-2 to all enemy followers. So, this is how you kind of like keep your momentum going in the later turns, because it helps you draw. If you put one of these out, so you can only pick, when you're choosing, you have to pick 2 different ones, but obviously the summon, the fanfare and the evolve are different, so are like separate ones. So you usually pick a Ravening Beetle and then one of the other 2 for each. So either Ruthless Mantis if you need to clear out a ward, or Reeling Shadowfly if you have remember, Reeling Shadowfly only works as board clear if you have the shadows for it. That is an important thing to note. Necromancy 6 is pretty spicy, but it is a pretty high cost. This deck does have decent shadow generation, but doesn't have unlimited shadow generation. So you do have to keep that in mind. Like, if you think, oh, I'll play 2 Reeling Shadowflies and get -4/-4 to all my opponent's followers and clear the board, that only works if you have 12 shadows. If you have less than 12 shadows, you only get one of those effects. But you always draw a card for each Reeling Shadowfly. That doesn't count to your shadow. So Reeling Shadowfly is just like, okay, I don't need to clear anything with Ruthless Mantis, so I'll just take the card draw is probably the most part, and being a 1/3 Bane makes it just a kind of annoying follower to have on the board. It doesn't have Rush, and you almost always want to spend your Evo that turn evolving Zabet herself, so you're unlikely to be able to do it, but you can if, as I said, so it can not be particularly useful because you don't really have any way to give it Rush, but it's a 1/3. It can force your opponent into some annoying trades because it's a thing they really don't want sticking around because it's going to keep drawing you cards. And it might keep wiping up their board. So yeah. So that's just kind of like the general thing. One thing to note about playing Zabet is obviously on face value she summons 5 bodies she puts on the board, including herself. 5 is of course the maximum amount of bodies you can have on the board. So if you have anything else on the board, you have to remember to like trade in at least one of them or some of your stuff to make sure you've got 2 slots on the board when you evolve. Otherwise you're not getting your value and you might lose. Sometimes you're happy with just like summoning the second Ravening Beetle because you're killing your opponent. Sometimes not, but yeah, usually this means it will be so. But yeah, this just generally works out Zabet doing about 8 damage, maybe 10. Again, the beetles are a pretty good choice to hit with the Poison Apple Revival because it means it just summons another one, so you can then use that beetle to trade, and then the one it summons goes face, and then you've just basically done it. It's kind of just turned this into 2 extra damage, but also probably gives it Bane at that point as well. That's a name. I'm not going to say that one out loud. Sorry if it's just a silly name, but... Oh, yep, it's a bot. Yeah, get the fuck out of here. Anyway, Robot Knight. So that is basically the entirety of the deck. Can probably explain it, gone through all the cards in turn. But yeah, Zebed is usually just like they're always like they're trying to be so polite. It's like, no, fuck off. You know what you're here for. Of course. As a cool evil lady, she has a cool evil voice. So yeah, Zebed is your kind of like your game ender just because it's such a strong value. You get a full board of bodies from one card. They're all fairly powerful bodies. And it generally, because you've been wearing your opponent down, just generally ends the game. This does mean, because this deck doesn't caps out in terms of burst damage at around 8 or 10 at most, if you're like on a really, really good turn, means that decks with high sustain this deck is just lose to. There aren't that many decks with super high sustain that are like proper meta, but there are a lot of them that kind of sneak on the ladders. I keep encountering like super focused Lania heal Haven that this deck kind of just loses to, even though Lania doesn't really beat any other deck on ladder. So I don't know why people play it, but I guess they just play a lot of against a lot of Midrange Shadow. Anyway, I want to give this. I was planning on doing this before stream, but I'm just going to give this a funny name. So this is Just Good Cards. And now we will play a game. I will play a game of 2 on ladder with this deck to show you how it works in action and kind of like hopefully be able to talk through my like turns with this deck. I should really try and push to get Grandmasters this meta. So let's see, who are we up against? So we're up against Dragoncraft, which means we can't level our Lucius. Now, in most cases, this will probably be Deckbuff Dragoncraft. So Lucius isn't particularly valuable here. Zebet we don't really want our opening hand. Hi, Corvo. Yes, it's Armored Man. So I don't really want to keep all of these. Michael is better in the deck. Lucius... I guess Lucius is a good turn 3 play, but I'd rather ensure I get a good turn 1 or turn 2 play. Yeah, you like Armored Man, Aldos, the Dragoon, with his fucking boob plate. Because Jesus Christ, look how far that goes. Okay, so this is pretty good. Pretty good. Good selection of choices. So, depending on what they play... So the Dragoncraft, they probably won't play a follower on turn 2. Yeah, they ramp. Always ramp. Okay, so that's... I think I will play a Dial here, actually. Because I want to be decently aggressive against them. So I haven't gotten a clue on what deck... If they're playing deck buff, they haven't gotten any deck buffs currently, so they're a bit behind. But if they're playing Big Dragon, I'm probably in a bit of a problem because that's another deck that heals a lot. But I might, and I'm got a bit of a slow start. Okay, they're playing Big Dragon. And they've got a lot of big cards in hand. And they've burned they've burned 2 of their Drizails. That's pretty good for me because Drizail is the card that I really do not. So I think I want to... Do I play Twofold Grace here or full? I think I just play Fallen Sergeant. I want a body on the board to like push forwards. I don't want to play this Poisoned Apple yet. This is not worth Poisoned Appling. Like they shouldn't. They're probably not playing any Banish. But, okay, that's fine. So that gives me the kind of like good turn I was mentioning previously, where it's just like, because that will fetch me an Underworld Lieutenant, so I can play, I get my Dial next turn, and then I can play Underworld Lieutenant to put a ward in front of it. And just puts a generally, so yeah, so that's the Fallen Sergeant's effects propping, and I've got a Dial for next turn. So I've got turn 5 play. I might, but since we'll evolve a Dial here. Because if they do have, I know they've accelerated 2 of their Drizails, so they can't use that to wipe the board, but just in case they haven't, that actually puts a 6-6 on the blade, which doesn't because once they evolve the Underworld Lieutenant, the entire board just gets wiped by Drizail, which is the main thing I'm worried about at this point in the game at the 8 play points. Once they hit 10 play points, I'm in a bit... It's like the turn after this, things will start getting a bit annoying. But we'll see what they do. Like, I haven't had a strong enough, an aggressive enough start. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, so I don't have. I was hoping they wouldn't kill that off there. Okay. So they're going to be at 10 next turn, but depends on what resources they have, really. And that is also just an annoyingly sized body because it's 4/4 and it's going to be on 3, so a Dial's like effect doesn't kill it. So maybe I do boss him, but I kind of like need to be aggressive this turn, I think. But maybe not. Maybe a Dial isn't worth playing because a Dial will be. Is it worth play? This is a difficult turn. I think I don't want to play a dial this turn. I think it's not going to be worth it. Okay, and then I just want to draw a card. So I'm going to do Tsukiyomi this turn just to kind of like use Night Terrors to ping for damage and then just not have... So they're going to try and... Because any like single follower I leave on the board is just going to get destroyed this turn anyway because they're going to play... Oh, damage isn't really worth... Yeah, it's not really worth pushing that damage anyway because they're going to play Celestial Worm God this turn. Or at least they want to play Celestial Worm God this turn. And that's going to heal them to 5. So committing too much damage, like focusing on like a high damage turn, is I probably should have played as Amaterasu actually, because the damage isn't going to matter, because they're going to heal that. And there's, yeah, they're just going to heal to 4. So yeah, because I didn't have a particularly aggressive start, I think I'm just kind of fucked here. But I'm gonna try. So I'm gonna go 2 Reeling Shutterflies here. Like, it's gonna eat my shadows for no real gain, but it's gonna draw me 2 cards. Oh no, I'm gonna overdraw. Fuck, that was a bad idea. I didn't realize, of course. So this is gonna draw me 2 cards, put me up to 9, and then I'm gonna be... I should have just put one of those as the thing. So now they're gonna do some fucking nonsense because they're playing Big Dragon, and I needed a more aggressive start against Big Dragon. I didn't have any 1-drops, I didn't have any good moves. They're gonna do Relic Dragon nonsense, and I'm just going to cry. Alright, what have you drawn? What 0 play point nonsense are you playing now? You're gonna play 2 Tarrasques, and am I gonna cry? I'm gonna play Fafnir. Yeah, I'm so screwed. How much damage is it? Yeah, 5 minus 9. So I'm not dead this turn, but I'm in a real bad spot. Gusty Banishment is just bad. Yet there's Tarrasque, that's 7 up. I don't think I can win this. Like, it's way too late for me to... So this is one of those, this is, as I said, I fucked up there, but like, this is also just a weird case where my opponent is playing a not particularly popular, like, common deck in like actual meta sense, but it's a popular deck in like the ladder because people just like playing Big Dragon, man. They just love the Big Dragon. I've had 5 here, so I can do this. I will do this to get a card out of my hand. You trade off that. See what I draw. So I'm gonna try and survive because that's the kind of person I am. So this is kind of a bad either because I don't get her end of turn effect because she trades out, but she still like actually trades out. So maybe my opponent draws garbage. Like, it's entirely possible that they have not drawn a crowd. Okay, I hate this card. I hate Voracious Venomore so much. It always feels unfair. Okay. Thankfully, it doesn't really matter in that case. But it's just like, fuck off with your randomly split nonsense. I hate they keep putting randomly split nonsense. It's just lame. So a dial got hit, so she costs 7. But it doesn't really matter because my play points are maxed out anyway. I get a Michael. With another 2-fold grace. I really like to So it doesn't even tell you on the effect how much it hit you for. I don't know what my max HP is currently. Nonsense card. Okay, so I said I don't want to pop either of these amulets. They're all too good for my opponent. So that's too inefficient for a moment. So I'm just gonna start with cycling cards to hopefully get something better at this point. You're kind of okay, but not really. I'm gonna play it. Like, I can deal with this board, I guess, but I don't like it. Damn, I'm gonna run out of time. I kind of fucked that up a bit as well. Okay. But they have the Fafnir effect, so they're gonna kill me anyway. But again, I am not one to give up. Because they could possibly deck themselves. They're most likely to kill me. But they could possibly... No, they can't deck themselves. They got Relic Dragon in the deck. Fucking degen... Like this... Like, Degenerate Dragon's actually fine. I don't care so much. I just hate Voracious Venom. It's such a just fuck you card. Where if I can draw another Zabet, I'm still in this. Right, what did you get, Voracious Venom? You got a Relic Dragon. Degenerate Dragon, you got a Relic Dragon. To cycle a card back into your deck. Did you get something that kills me? Did you get a Trask or anything? You got an all that glitters. Fuck you! That's a random targeted effect, by the way, so that was 1 in 3 chance for that to kill me. Like, I lose it. I'm most likely lose anyway, but fuck off. So that was a case of being matched up against a deck where I have a really poor fucking matchup because they have a lot of healing. Hi V. So let's hopefully get matched up against a deck that isn't a really bad matchup. Because Big Dragon makes it nowhere in the tournament scene. You can look at any tournament and nobody gets anywhere with Big Dragon. It is a deck that only exists on ladder. Okay, Swordcraft. Swordcraft, we've got a pretty good chance of winning because we have a lot of board clear. This is a much better matchup. Okay, we only got a much better start here. We got a loyal Ghost Pup in hand. Like, the only way we were winning that Dragoncraft matchup is if I had a much more aggressive start, but I didn't. I ended up drawing just... I think I possibly should have just focused on playing just raw bodies earlier. Like, maybe the Twofold Grace or something. Just more stuff that can hit my opponent before they actually start bonking me in the face. So I'd rather play Twofold Grace this turn than a Dial. And I'll probably play okay, yeah, that's fine. That's still good value. So they're probably just playing a Rally Sword Grab. Oh, Lucius. Hopefully they don't have another one of those to trade off Lucius, because that would be annoying. But because they played Michael then, and they're unlikely to have kept a Michael in their opening hand, I could be like, okay, it's less likely for them to have a Michael to deal with this Lucius, so that's a really good play. That was an interesting choice to play Day there. Maybe this is Charlemagne. Okay, now this is, what's my... Like, if I can wait... I don't really have many good options to actually play here. Because I kind of want to wait until turn 5 to play this Dial, given what I have in hand. And, like... Whilst it is technically, like, would arguably be better to hit this, I think I'm just going to... I'm gonna just play Loyal Ghost Pup. I could have played the Hellfire Strike, but I think it's better to save it for when I can actually... Okay, they're playing... As they still could be Rally, but if they're playing Rally, they're in a pretty bad spot. Okay. That's fine. Okay, so they trade off there. That's fine. And then this turn... Play a dial. I have to trade off his dashing drill list. Oh yeah, Arch Throne. I never really heard of Arch Thrones before that, but I just heard it's like a really big fucking scenario mod for Dark Souls 3, isn't it? Seems neat. I may give it a try. Yeah, I figured from the name it's very... They're running Rosalie? That's interesting. I don't think Rosalie is going to help you, bud. I think they forgot that's how that order worked out. This is slightly awkward because now I don't have the space to just raw Zabet here, but I don't think I have to. No. I don't have to play Zabet here, I can just use the ghosts from Slayer of the Dead and Hellfire Strike here, they're just dead. Like, they messed up because they didn't realize, they forgot about the fact that Adet heals all, Last Words heals all of my followers and my face, and then I can just end turn and she kills them. Sometimes I feel like playing out other cards to kill, sometimes I'm just like, yeah, no, I'll just do the bare minimum to actually win. I suppose I could have just played Hellfire Strike there, but, yeah, but because Adile healed my board before they traded in the other follower couldn't kill my Adile. So it's Adile. Adet is the, I'm pretty sure, well, Adet is the, so I'll do one more game. I'll do try and do 3 games because that was a fairly quick one. So that's basically how the game plan goes out. You just play good cards, your opponent can't deal with all of your good cards, and you just kind of overwhelm them. But they were playing a very weird version. Okay, so with Shadowcraft, so there's 2 likelihoods of playing against Shadowcraft. We're either playing... Shadowcraft has 3 pretty good decks right now. So we'll keep Twofold Grace here. Slayer of the Dead isn't really worth keeping for going first. Especially going first. Ghastly Banishment isn't worth keeping if you've got better 2-drops in hand, and we've got Twofold Grace, which is a really good 2-drop. And Night Terrors is just a neat card to have. We've got 2 Twofold Graces, which is pretty good, assuming that they blow up our things. So we'll see what kind... Okay, so they're playing... So we instantly know our opponent's playing Neutral Lost Words. Which depending on how the game goes, I do think Midrange Shadow is pretty favored against. Especially if they burn their Alduses this early. On effects like that. Okay, so given this hand, what I'm going to do, so here's where I explain how double stacking Twofold Grace works. So I've got Amaterasu's effect on me. So because of that, I'm going to Twofold Grace for Tsukiyomi. Thank you for the follow, Vice Snail. And then because I Night Terror's Tsukiyomi, you can see because they're 2 different effects, they do stack. So on my next turn, I'll summon an Amaterasu, and then the turn after, I'll summon Tsukiyomi. And also I have a lot of shadows, which means I can get this Blossom Beauty free Evo. So given this, bro, what do I want to do? I think I want to, because if I bomb Aldous, that's going to heal for 2, and then yeah, okay, I'll do this. And then that's basically trading because she pings, and then I do another ping there. Then I think do I just? It's a question of do I play Blossom Beauty and Ghastly Banishment, or Underworld Lieutenant for the body? And I think I play. I think I'm gonna play Blossom Beauty and Ghastly here. Just for the card draw and pushing damage. Like, Underworld Lieutenant would have given me more pressure, but this just pushes a bit more damage. Evil Exhumer's not. That's only heals for 1, so it's not too bad, depending on what it is. God damn, they still had. Okay. Like, the main thing that slows us down is Aldous, because Aldous heals. So we want all the reanimates, like, neutral summons to be Angels or Balls, so. This is pretty fine. In fact, we can just dial this board. Like, we're not in a great spot, all things considered. Like, I could have also Underworld. Like, I had 2 choices. I could have dialed or Underworld Lieutenant Hellfire Strike. And both are pretty good, I think. But now we've got a dial behind at least one. Like, they probably can clear most of this board. Last Fight Shadow does have pretty good board clear options. That's their lot. They're at 9 last words count. So they've gone pretty well there. Remember, they're Shadowcraft, so Lucius does give the ancient artifacts, which could be important. Okay, so they're clearing off with it's just got enough healing to kind of just counteract my slow burn. So this might not work out pretty well. But at least that 2 damage is pretty useful. That made that a pretty good value because it meant he. So they're prepping for a to kind of like bowl me over next turns. I'm kind of thinking what's my best option here. So like, it's an awkward moment because they're going to probably wipe my board anyway next turn. So what do I actually... So I don't think I want to commit too much of a board, really. I think I'm going to draw cards whilst pushing damage. So we can play Lucius, so we can Night Terrors one of the ghosts, so hopefully draw Zebed or something. Yeah, Ghastly Banishment's pretty good. Here. I don't really want to commit an Evo here. Because basically I don't want to like make a big wide board just for them to Isyan deck my board. Because that's what they're going to do. They're going to play, get their Alice out. They're going to Poisoned Apple it. And they might not be Isyan jetting this turn. That's clever, they're healing. Okay, they're not Isyan jetting this turn. That's pretty damn good for me. Question is, can I kill this turn? So that's one, so I've got... No, I don't think I can kill this turn, but I can push a decent amount of damage. They are going to want, so... They're going to draw at least 1 card next turn. If they Isyan jet, they draw 2 more cards. That's 4 damage from Hellfire, 1 damage from Suki. So I think what I want to do is I want to play this twofold for... Yeah, I'm going to play twofold for that. A dial on Evo, just to push damage. And then Hellfire Strike. Because I just need to use play points to push damage at this point. And what I'm hoping for is that they can't kill me this turn. And then I can finish them all next turn. That is a weird... Oh, no, because that gets them another Alice. Okay. But they're still trading with that. If they don't kill... Yeah, they're not killing me this... Okay, yeah, they just didn't have Issendet in hand. Because Issendet would have wiped their board and given them the board space to actually clear. This is what you have to be careful with when playing that deck, which is Last Word's Shadow. Is you can very easily board lock yourselves by just filling your... You can still kind of see that they've filled their board with artifacts with these amulets that aren't really doing much, and then they obviously can't play anything. And so if you don't have ways like Night Terrors to blow up your own Alices, then you can be in a bit of a problem. But yeah. Because people are like, oh, I gotta play these Fount of Angels to proc my Alices, and then you realize, hang on, Fount of Angels is a countdown 2 card, so if you play too many of them, it can quite happily board lock you. So that's mid-range. I didn't really play Zabet in any of those, apart from once in the game that I lost because I was doing that. But that still demonstrates what Midrange Shadow does. You see, it doesn't do a massive amount of damage each turn, but it just makes a big board. It does a bit of damage each turn and kind of like overwhelms your opponent over time. And as you saw, against cards that have big healing, against decks that have big healing, which is mostly just Control Haven and like Big Dragon, it has a problem dealing with, or just like certain high rolls of stuff like Deckbuff Dragon. Hopefully I'll have time to do Deckbuff Dragon today. This first deck took a lot longer to demonstrate than previous. I think explaining the next deck will take shorter. So the next deck is another deck I play. So that's one of the decks I've been like playing when I just want to win games on ladder mostly. And Midrange Shadow just does that really well. It beats a lot of common decks just by, again, outvaluing, outmaneuvering. It just play good cards. It's just a deck of good cards. That's all there is to it. Good cards that give you board presence and do damage to your opponent's face. So if your opponent doesn't have a large amount of healing, then you just run over them. And now the next deck. In the next part of this lesson, I will be explaining to you Golem Runecraft. This is a very fun deck. I love this deck. Well, that's why an important thing is to have fun, but obviously this is me experimenting, so this is me doing a new thing. I'm not like some grandmaster expert tournament player. I'm just trying to explain from my perspective decks that I like playing and how to win the games, because I've played them a lot and I think that stands for something. And I want to put content out. I don't really want to say content. I want to put guides out there that aren't the kind of guides you usually see, because a lot of Shadowverse Deck Guides are very sparse. They're very quick and to the point. They give you a very brief explanation of like, this is the kind of gist you do with the key cards. This is your general kind of game plan. And here's a couple of examples of play. And they're fine if you want a quick bite size, but I want to do long. And I did some of these in the past, but kind of like the form I was doing them in just didn't really sit that well with me. And like I kind of got burnt out, but if I'm not planning on doing them as a regular thing, just sometimes I go, okay, I'm feeling like doing a couple of deck guides as a whole stream. The only problem is this does make me very thirsty. Yeah, and so that's good, having a good deck guide for like off-meta decks. I might do some more off-meta decks if I feel like doing these, but as I said, because this is my first time doing this in a while, and as I'm not a massively experienced like I'm not planning on video editing or whatever. I'm just going to put these up as highlights and then upload those straight to YouTube. I don't really want to get too bogged down with big decks. But so anyway, so this is Golem Rune, affectionately named Golems Get Ye Gone, which is a reference to a very old Grand Blue meme. Do you recognize that? Yeah, my YouTube, there's a link to it in my bits under the in all the Twitch links and stuff, but it also should just be Kurosami Digital Rabbit VTuber. If you see, it's loads of VODs. If you see you can recognize it because I use a very similar, very samey formatting for all my VODs, and it's catching up. So I'll probably put these outside of the usual like scheduled VODs because I'm still catching up to a lot of VODs right now. But yeah, the link is in the Twitch box, all the Twitch box down below, and it's mostly a VODs channel, but I'll also have these, and they'll be in their own little playlist that will be featured along. So because I've already got for the previous guides I did, and whilst those have long since rotated out, they'll still be there if anyone wants to look at them. But anyway, Golem Rune. Thank you. But yeah, Golem Rune. So Golem Rune, I'm going to start with the key card of the deck. This deck is built entirely around this card. It's Golem Lord. It is a 5 play point 5/5. So already fine stats, but obviously in this day and age, Shadowverse, a 5 play point 5/5, that doesn't get you anywhere. You're playing a card for 5 play points, it's got to be good value. Like, as we were talking with the previous one, a dial is a 5 play point card that gets you 8/8 of stats with last words effects. So just raw stats doesn't get you far. What Golem Lord is all about is golems. He just loves you playing lots and lots of golems. So we'll just go from top to bottom as effects, might as well. So his Accelerate 1, so you can play this as a 1 play point spell. Earthright, where you... So if you've got a stack of Earthright runes, Earth runes, whatever they're called these days. Earth sigils, that's the name. They're just called stacks. No one calls them by Earth sigils anymore. So if you have your stack of Earth sigils in play, if you have at least one of them, you can play this as a 1 play point spell, summon a clay golem, which is a 2/2. So that's pretty good value. And at the end of the turn, you get your Golem Lord back. So that's real good value. You basically just get, for 1 play point and an Earth Sigil, you get a Golem for free, and that's pretty damn good. And then on Fanfare, so when you play this for 5, you get Earthright 2, so that's a stack of 2 Earth Sigils. He summons 2 Guardian Golems. Guardian Golems are 3/3s with Ward, which is pretty damn good. Again, they cost 4, which does technically matter in this deck, but also not really. So yeah, clay golems, you love them. They are the golems that will get ye gone, as opposed to the golem that should get ye gone. And then here's the kicker. Here is what this card does. Also, it does 5 damage to all enemy followers, which is pretty damn good. That's usually a board clear, especially on turn 5. And here's the kicker. This is what the deck is built around. At the end of your turn, deal X damage to the enemy leader. X equals the number of allied clay golems and guardian golems that have come into play this match. So that is how you kill people in this deck. Is you play your Golem Lord, and because you've played loads of you've put loads of clay golems and guardian golems into the play, either through Golem Lord or various other effects that we'll get into as we go through the cards. You do a shitload of damage to their face at the end of the turn. And there's a few game plans that go around this that will kind of like explain once I've gone through all the cards, but that's the kind of like what the deck is built around. So you get Earth Sigils, so you can summon golems so that your Golem Lord does more damage. That's the basic gist of the deck. The other like core card of the deck that kind of like makes it work is Ear. Lovely, lovely Ear. Look at her, she's lovely. She's got a little deer with her and an apple. She's a 2 play point 2/1 with Reanimate X. strange. That's a Runecraft card with Reanimate. So they've done it before. It's because it's always dependent on spell boost in some way. So X equals the number of times this card has been spell boosted. So it's fine. You've got this kind of feeds into Golem Lord because Golem Lord is a one play. You play Golem Lord frequently as a one play point spell that recurs itself to summon clay golems. So spell boost works pretty well with this deck in general. And if X is at least 10, evolve this summon follower. So this is basically, you kind of see what you want to do with this already. So you want to get that. So the X at least 10 is kind of like an extra bonus, but the primary thing you want is X to be at least 5. You want her to be spell boosted by at least 5, because then she reanimates Golem Lord. So then that's a 2-play point, and she's a 2-play point card. So it's a way to get more Golem Lords. So you play your Golem Lord on turn 5. It does a decent amount of damage. It usually does like 3 or 4 or maybe 5 damage if you've gotten really lucky. Maybe 6 or 7 if you've gotten really, really lucky if you play it on turn 5. And then your opponent blows it up because they want to not die. And then you're just like, haha, now I play an ear for 5 who's been spell boosted 5 or more times. And she summons more Golem Lords, who then do more damage to your opponent's face. And you kind of overwhelm them with Golem Lords. She's also which handy is when she evolves, which includes when she evolves for free from her own effect. It doesn't have to be a manual evo. You spell boost the cards in your hand 2 times and give your leader a damage shield. So they ignore the next damage they take. Which is very good for like long. That damage shield is very good for like staying alive whilst you like build up towards actually killing your opponent. And also the spell boost 2 times. Usually what that means is spell boosting other ears in your hand so that then you can play more, you can reanimate more Golem Lords. So you want to have. So there's a few ways you can get right through this deck, and I kind of like explain the whole game plan ahead of time. So the other kind of like, hello Shogun. The other like core. So you're thinking, wow, this deck is really reliant on Golem Lords. How do I guarantee I draw Golem Lords? That's what this card is for. This card is Familiar's Pact and is a 1-play point spell. Cheap spells, very good for spell boosting. That puts a random follower with Earthright from your deck into your hand and summons a magic sediment, which is your stacking Earth Sigil. And the only follower with Earthright in the entire deck is Golem Lord. So whenever you play Familiar's Pact, it will draw Golem Lord. So you effectively have 6 Golem Lords in your deck. And preferably you'd rather draw Familiar's Pact first, but also drawing Golem Lord first is fine. But obviously if you don't have any Golem Lords left in your deck, then Familiar's Pact draws nothing and is just a 1-play point spell that summons a magic sediment, which can still be useful. And now we go through the rest of the cards that were all kind of like to support this idea of getting lots of golems and playing lots of Golem Lords. So first we have Multi-Elemental Neophyte is a 1-play point 1/1 with fanfare, puts a magical augmentation into your hand, which is a 1-play point spell that deals 1 damage to an enemy follower with Earthright to deal 4 damage instead and draw 2 cards. And it has last words, summon a magic sediment, summon a Earth Sigil. So this is just a really good solid 1-drop. It's a 1/1 body which can help in early matchups, and the magical augmentation is a very versatile card in your hand to use. Like there's one use you can use it as fusion trash for cards I'll get to in a bit later, or you can use it to dig through your deck if you're willing to spend the Earthright for it. And also makes it a very efficient removal because it's 1 play point for 4 damage. That's really strong. And you can even just use it as a 1 play point, deal 1 damage to enemy follower. Like, that can be a use for it. You can use it that way. But like, it's usually just... So it's just a solid card that can be used in a variety of ways. And you get a 1 play point, 1/1 follower with an Earth Sigil in play, and in most cases, 1 Earth Sigil equals 1 Golem. It's in 90% of the time. Sometimes there are other effects you use Earth Sigils for, and that's okay. And sometimes, in a rare case, you get There's one card in the deck where you get more than one golem per Earth Sigil. That's an easy way to think about it. Every Earth Sigil is a golem in some form. A potential golem, if you will. And I've got another useful card. This is Undying Witch. It's a bit hard to kind of like understand how exactly this works just looking at the text, but once you start playing it, it's a very simple card. So it's a 1 play.11, so another just normal cheap body with fanfare. If the leftmost card in your hand is the same type as a card played by your opponent during their previous turn, so the leftmost card will usually be the oldest card in your hand. It'll be the card but you can see it. It's the card that's in your hand on the left. Is the same type as a card played by your opponent during their previous turn, so you summons a magic sediment and draws a card. So again, that's another Earth Sigil, and that's a card, but it is conditional, so you don't want to play this card just as a 1/1 body. That's really bad. You want to only play this card when you see that it's glowing the slightly different color and effect that the ability is triggered. But again, usually, like, the deck doesn't have any amulets in hands. This deck does run at least one of every card type. So usually this will be active because it'll be fairly common that your leftmost card will be a spell or a follower, and your opponent will usually play a spell or a follower during their turn. Depending on the deck. It can depend wildly on the deck. So that's good. And if not, you've got a safety net for that in the form of a card I will come back to later. So no card, this is the nice thing about the deck, is no card is ever like completely useless, because you can use them to fuse to a particular card. So it does also, if you've used up 7 Earth Sigils this match, she evolves for free. She cannot evolve. She's one of those cards that cannot evolve with Evo points. You have to use an effect. And when she's evolved, she gives your leader the effect for the rest of the game, is that the first time you consume any Earth Sigils, you recover an amount of play points equal to the Earth Sigils consumed. Now, in like pure Earthright decks that focus on spending a lot of Earth Sigils, you kind of want to focus on this effect, but in this deck, you don't usually rely on it. Again, Golem Lord is one of the 2 cards in base cards that has like this can be useful to have, and like having a 1 play point free Evo is very nice for like knocking out enemy boards and stuff. But you're not really playing around this effect unless it's a game that's kind of like taking up more time. Because this deck, one of the advantages of this deck is it can go for a aggressive mid-range game plan, or it can shift into a long-term OTK game plan. That's one of the reasons why this deck is quite strong. So anyway, we've already looked at Familiar's, so that's just, but basically it's a 1 play point 1/1 that cycles and puts an Earth Sigil into play is what you'll mostly be playing this as. Don't think about trying to, I should save it until I've consumed 7 stat cards, because the game might not even reach that point. Next card is Gruine, Levardian Provost. She is a 2 play point 2/2, which is already fine on stats. She is like a lot of cards in the deck, she summons a magic sediment, an Earth Sigil. And at the start of your opponent's turn, if your total Earth Sigil stack is at least 3, you get a Verdict Ritual. Which is not that card, that's the Magic Sediment. Verdict Ritual is a 2 play point spell that deals 3 damage to any enemy, so this can go face, and has Earthright Draw a card. So this is a very nice card to have. It's a spell, so it spell boosts. You can use it to, if you need to dig through your deck, you can use it to cycle through your deck. And it's more damage to your opponent's face, which for is very good for the more mid-range burn your opponent down game plan. And she's also got a very good Evo, so that's like if you're at the start of your opponent's turn if your stack is at least 3. So you won't get the magic sediment until your opponent's turn, so you do have to be mindful of that. It's like if you can't just play her when you have 3 stacks, you have to wait until you've actually clicked end turn and your opponent turn started. Which is that if you're playing a variant of this deck that runs, there's a slightly more defensive variant of this deck that runs the Snow Defender Golem, which is one of the effects that like consumes sigils at the end of turn, so that can come into play, but doesn't come into play in this deck list. And when you evolve, she adds 1 to the stack in play, so that's another Earth Sigil. But remember, it's add 1 to a stack in play. So if you have no Earth Sigils in play, she does not add anything to the stack. Important thing to remember with that. And she gives -1/-1 to all enemy followers. So pretty good, and full Evo stats, of course. So just a pretty good value Evo that can knock down your opponent's board. Even if it doesn't completely wipe the board, it'll neuter their board a bit, like maybe knock some of their small followers, especially since you're usually using this Evo effect on turn 4. And generally just useful. Generally just nice. It's just a nice bonus to have. Just a good solid Evo to help you deal with opponents' wide boards. We've already talked about here. Next is Summoning Disaster. This is a slightly annoying card to play. So it's initially a 2 play point spell that summons a clay golem and a magic sediment, which is great. There's a great effect. That's a great card. Unfortunately, it comes with these enhance effects. And the first enhance force, summon an Eldritch Chimera instead of a clay golem. It's like, we don't want to summon an Eldritch Chimera. Like, sure, it is a 5/5 ward that can't be destroyed by effects, but that does not progress our game plan in any way. So, there is basically, unless you are completely desperate, there is no situation where you ever want to play this card enhanced to 4 or 7. Because 7... Because playing it for 7 instead of the Magic Sediment, which is a thing you desperately do want in the deck, you summon an Eldritch Demon, which is a 4/4 storm that heals itself for 3 at the end of turn. Huh? Like, they might, like, I don't see a world where the either enhance effects on this card are played in a normal, like, I guess in Take 2 that's pretty good, that's pretty solid. But in Constructed, you never want to play this card for an enhanced effect. But it's worth playing for the base effect, so you do have to keep that in mind. If you have 4 play points or 4 or more play points, you do not play this card. You keep it in hand and play it later. Or you fuse it otherwise. But when you do play it for 2, it's great. It is a golem and a magic sediment. That's basically 2 golems. Don't you just love 2 golems? 2 golems, 2 play points. That science. And it's a spell. Spells give you spell boosts. So great card to play on 2. Never play up for 4 or 7. The only time you play this for 7 is if your opponent is on, if you have no other damage in hand and your opponent has an open defense and they're at 4 health, because it will kill them. But in any other situation, you do not play that for 7. Next is a neat little useful card. It is Binding Ritual. It is a 2 play point Earth Sigil Amulet. It is stack 2, so it is 2 Earth Sigils in 1 card. Lovely. It has fanfare, draw a card. It cycles. Lovely. And it gives a random enemy follower with 2 attack or less the following effect till end of the opponent's turn. Can't attack, so it locks down an opponent's follower in the early game. It curtails early game aggression. It helps you stall out a bit more so that you can build your you have more time to build golems. And I said, it's 2 stacks. It's 2 golems. Or 2 cards from Magic Sediment. Not Magic Sediment, Magical Augmentation. And so much more. It is a handy little card. And it's just solid. It's just solid. It's 2 stacks. Draws you a card. It's good. It's just good. And that's basically it. It's not got much going off for it, but it's just the 2 Earth Sigils that cycle for 2. And then we have Celestial Command. This is a card that is very useful. Because it is a 3 play point spell with Fusion. Fusion is a mechanic that not everyone is fully aware of, especially people new to Shadowverse, is where you basically banish a card from your hand to grant effects to another card. Now, it keeps track of what cards are fused to what card, and that comes into play in other effects, but in this case, it doesn't actually matter. It's nice and simple. It is, you can fuse when you fuse one card to this card, it adds 1 to a stack in play. Remember, it's adds 1 to a stack, not puts a magic sediment in play, so it's not, if you don't have any stacks in play, fusing 1 card to this does nothing. And we'll get to its the other effect just after, but first I'll then do summon the Guardian Golem, so that's a 3 play point, you're summoning a 3/3 ward for 3, and a magical sediment. So that's another card that's 2 golems in 1. Value! So playing it on 3 is pretty good. But you also generally want to keep 1 in hand, so that you can... This is what you kind of like feed cards that aren't particularly useful for, and turn them into Earth Sigils, into another Earth Sigil stack. So you can put your magical augmentation if you don't really need to use it for removal. You can put an Undying Witch that isn't active in there, or just any card that you don't really need in hand right now and you'd rather have an additional Earth Sigil, which does come up. And if you fuse 2 cards to it at once, any 2 cards, you have to use Runecraft's card to it, obviously, but there's no neutral cards in the deck, so that doesn't really come up. It transmutes, which is a fancy way of it turns into a different card. It turns into Celestial Convergence. This is a card you won't play that often, but it can be quite powerful. So Celestial Convergence is a 6 play point card, so it's a bit costly, but it summons 3 Guardian Golems and evolves them. So that is 3 Golems for no Earthright. That's pretty good. I keep forgetting that. I keep forgetting that it doesn't need Earthright to summon the Golems and evolve them. The Earthright 2 effect for it is still quite powerful though, which is until the end of your opponent's turn, give all allies the following effect, reduce damage from effects by 2. So that includes the golems it summons, any followers you still have currently on the board when you play this card, and your own face. So against decks that have effect damage, that's really strong. It is very, very strong against Midrange Shadow, because a lot of Midrange Shadow's effects deal exactly 2 damage. They have a lot of effects that just deal 2 damage. They have a Dial, they have Underworld Lieutenant, they have the Ravenous Beetle, and this Celestial Convergence says for 1 turn those do nothing. A Dial does nothing. Like, you still take damage from things hitting your face, so you still have to be careful. But usually the 3 evolved Guardian Golems can clear your opponent's board. Hopefully you have 2 or hopefully 3 of them still on the board, so that your opponent still has something to get through. But that's 3 golems. That's a good way to accelerate your golem. You do have to fuse 2 cards to it, which is obviously cuts down on your card efficiency a bit. But by the time you're playing it, you've probably got cards that aren't so useful. Like Binding Ritual that late isn't so useful. Green that late isn't so useful. Like, you might have a Summoning Disaster that you can't really play because you have to. It's going to be too awkward to play, so you use it there. So just another good way to get more Earth Sigils. You can play it for a Golem and an Earth Sigil, and in some cases you can play it you can turn it into Celestial Convergence by fusing 2 cards to it, and get a big ball of Golems just to like cover your ass for a turn while you set up for an. You'll usually play this when you're setting up for an OTK because you want to delay that your OTK turn is usually turn 7, and you want to kind of like, so this will keep you alive, usually keep you alive for a turn, whilst progressing your golem count, which is really good. Next is Ultramarine Witch. It has a cost here, it has stats here, but none of those matter in this case. We almost never ever play this as a 5-drop. There is a situation when you play as a 5-drop, but you almost never do, because there's almost always a better option. But the main reason is a crystallized one. It is a 1 play point Earth Sigil that when it leaves play, it draws a card. So that whenever you play another Earth Sigil or use up this is your last Earth Sigil, congratulations, you draw a card. No, it is not Space Marines. Ultramarine is a color. Damn it. It is a color, Shogun. But 99.99% of the time, you play this as the crystallize and these effects don't matter. But sometimes you're like, I don't have a Golem Lord active in hand. My opponent is at 3 or 5 life, and I have 20 cards or less in my deck, and everything on my opponent's board only has 3 health. I can clear the board and kill with this. Yay! That is the only time you play this as a 5. Every other, only when it's guaranteed to kill your opponent or you are absolutely desperate for the board clear. Otherwise, you play this as a 1 play point sigil that cycles, basically. But a 1 play point sigil is just damn good. And we have Golem Lord who's gonna Fate's Hand. Look, it's Karu. This is the limited. You will probably have a Fate's Hand that does not look anything like this, because it is the regular Fate's Hand you get from whatever rotation format it is in. But I have the Princess Connect Fate's Hand, because I've been playing this game for a long time. Anyway, Fate's Hand is a really simple card. It is one of the normal class of spell boost cards where it's just like, it's spell boost. What is it spell boost for? It gets cheaper. So eventually it gets to 0 cost after you've played a bunch of spells, and it draws you 2 cards. When you're playing a deck that plays a decent amount of spells, you just put Fate's Hand in it because it draws you more cards. It's just value. And then because it's a spell, when you get it to 0 play points, which is fairly easy, it's fairly easy to, or just a cheap 1 or 2 play points, or maybe even play it for 3. You only play it for if you play it for 5, it is because you are in a very bad spot and you really need some kind of answer and you're desperate. But otherwise you play this, like, ideally you play this for 0, but playing it for 1 or 2 is also fine if you've got a bunch of other spell boosts in hand and you have nothing else better to do with your play points. But yeah, it's standard, you know it, you love it, it's Fate's Hand, it's Runecraft's way of drawing lots of cards. And because it's your standard, it's a spell boost card that you then use to spell boost additional cards, which we will also get to, which is basically also the function of Crushing Rain, except instead of drawing you cards, it deals damage. Again, this is ideally played for 0 or 1, just something cheap. It deals 2 damage to a random enemy follower and then enemy leader. The random enemy follower damage mostly only matters in the early game. Late game, you're mostly just playing this for face damage, but it's good. Generally, you want to save these until they're useful, even if they're setting at 0 cost, unless you need to get. So either you need a spell boost, or you need to remove removes an annoying follower, or it helps you kill reach for lethal to kill your opponent. You don't want to just like, if you get a 0 cost Crushing Rain in hand, you don't want to just play it because you have a 0 cost Crushing Rain in hand. You want to play it because it'll help you win that turn, usually. Or help you push more damage if your opponent's got a ward in the way or something. Then we'll go back to Mr. Bertrand, School Magus. Look at this lovely old man. He has a cost. He has a body. Neither of those matters. We play him for his Accelerate. This is not a Mysteria deck. We do not give a shit about him putting 2 different random Mysteria cards, including Mr. Bertrand School Magus in hand, because we don't have 2 different Mysteria cards that aren't Mr. Bertrand School Magus in the deck. This deck simply does not run any other Mysteria cards. So if you play this for 6, something has gone wrong. you probably should just concede. You've probably already lost. But accelerate. He puts this spell in your hand. He puts Mysterious Circle in your hand and reduces its cost to 1. What's Mysterious Circle? It's a spell that summons a clay golem, and it gives ward to all clay golems already in play. So that's just good. He's 2 spells. That's basically 2 spells for 1 card. That's spell boost twice. So that's 2 spell boosts and a golem for 2 play points, basically, that you could spread out over 2 turns. Great. Never play this card for 6 play points. It's a terrible idea. Again, if you're playing in a Mysteria deck, which no one is anymore, then yeah, you can play him for 6. But usually no. Usually you have no reason. Even in Mysteria, playing him for 6 is kind of eh. You're usually pretty desperate at that point. 6 is usually the turn you kill your opponent, so in a Mysteria deck. Or you're prepping to kill your opponent and he doesn't really accelerate that in any way. But no, so that's just a good card that spell boost, that's progresses your spell boosts and your golems in 1 card pretty well. And the last card is another card that does a similar thing. It is Outdoors Mage. It is, again, it has a body. The body does not matter, but can matter in bad situations, but can still matter. But the main reason you play this card is for the Accelerate, which is Accelerate 1, so that means he casts as a spell, where he deals 2 damage to a random enemy follower and summons a magic sediment. So that's another Earth Sigil, that's a spell, so it spell boosts, and it helps you just a lot of under optimal circumstances. But that's kind of like the good. It's got a lot of plan Bs in case shit really hits the fan. And he summons a magic sediment, so it's very good against early game, dealing with your opponent's early game board, just getting rid of annoying followers so they don't beat you up early game, and you can keep your own golems safe so you can beat your opponent with golems. And then you can, if you have literally nothing better to do this turn, on turn 7, which is pretty late for having nothing better to do on a turn, you can play him for 7, then he's a 4/5 that summons 3 clay golems and evolves all of them. Actually evolves all allied clay golems, so if you have any clay golems already on the field, he'll evolve them too. But he summons 3 anyway, so if you have more than 1 clay golem on the field, or a clay golem and an Earth Sigil, oh no, you're not getting all your golems. Whoops, sorry. But again, if you're like, if I can just survive, you basically only play this guy for 7 if you're like, if I can just survive until next turn, I get 3 more golems this turn, I will win next turn as long as I don't die. So I just need to do this to clear my opponent's board and hope they don't kill me next turn. Which is generally worse than Celestial Convergence, but also doesn't cost as much because you don't have to fuse cards to Celestial to do it. You just play him. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't even cost you Earth Sigils. So that's all the cards overall. So kind of like the way, there's 2 kind of game plans, but you mostly start off the same way. So the deck can either go for, you kind of have to decide depending on how the game is going at turn 5, basically. Turn 5 is your decision time, basically. There's so you can either play it as a mid-range, in which case you just want to play as many followers as you can, just overwhelm the player's values. You're playing lots and lots of golems without running out of cards because your golem lords keep coming back. You're playing efficient cards that also generate Earth Sigils, so you're just getting lots of bodies for very little card generation, and you kind of exhaust your opponent whilst dealing lots of damage. And it's in this case, you're not too fussed about, of course you want to get as many golems as possible, but You're not forced to getting a huge number, but like having a Golem Lord that deals like 3 or 4 or 3 to 5 damage is what you expect, because if you do that enough times, it will kill your opponent. That's your general game plan against decks that don't have a lot of healing. So like against like Midrange Shadow or Swordcraft of any variety, really. Apart from Charlemagne, Swordcraft can have some healing, but not really a lot. So that's your kind of game plan. You just want to get Earth Sigils, turn those Earth Sigils into Golems, play a Golem Lord on 3 with... You want to make sure you play the... You want to make sure, turn 5, almost always, 90% of the time, you want to slam down a Golem Lord with at least 2 Earth Sigils on the field, so you get your 2 Guardian Golems. Can be a bit of a question of what you evolve at that point, but that's mostly match, and I'll probably get to show you during a match later. The other case, because then you so you get your Golem Lord out, your Golem Lord clears the board, does a bunch of damage, you leave a board with, because you've got a board, the minimum is a 5/5 and 2 3/3 wards, which is a pain. That's cleared your opponent's board because it's dealt 5 damage to it. It's a pain in the ass for your opponent to deal with. And then when your opponent has burned a load of resources to deal with your Golem Lord, you then can be like, aha, I just play either Golem Lords or Ears to get more Golem Lords and continue dealing lots of damage to your face while making large boards, and you just wear your opponent down and kill them like that, and then plink them down with Crushing Rain or even Verdict Rituals, just kind of like wear them down with just lots of damage. So very similar to Midrange Shadow in that regard. If your opponent has a lot of healing in the deck, like it's Havencraft, or like heal heavy variants of Havencraft, I'll admit, or any kind of control deck that can kind of like block you, stop you from killing them easily, you want to aim for an OTK. And of course, how you do an OTK with this deck is you need to have a combined total damage from your Golem Lords that equals 20, which is possible, especially with Ear. So usually what that means is you want to cold Ears in your hand and Golem Lords in your hand. You don't want to play Golem Lords for bodies unless Golem Lords for 5 unless you have to in that case. And then you get yourself into a situation where you play 2 Golem Lords in 1 turn, and if you should do, because you've been like biding your time and summoning lots of golems, you'll have 10 golems that have entered play, and so you have 2 Golem Lords, and that's at least 20 damage. If your opponent has effects that increase their maximum health past 20, like Goddess of Condemnation, then obviously you'll need more damage, but again, you can get more damage. You can reach that. If your opponent isn't killing you quickly, you can match their maximum HP grinding unless they do something really silly. So the deck can OTK, but you have to know when to pivot towards it. And this does mean you can... Because late in the game, if you just hold on to all the Golem Lords, you will end up with a hand of like 3 Golem Lords and 2 Ears, and you don't need that many. You only need like 1 of each maximum. Like, that's a case where the refundability from Undying Witch can come into play, because you can, like, if you have 2 Earth Sigils players, you can play Golem Lord, he Earthrights 2, which refunds you 2 player points, and then you can play another full Golem Lord, and that's 2 Golem Lords even if you don't have an Ear to reanimate. So that's when so again, in a control deck, you might want to hold on to and keep 1 Undying Witch in your hand if you're playing a longer game, because then that effect can be quite powerful. So whilst the OTK is still kind of like slower than a lot of other OTK decks out on the meta, it's not a focused OTK deck. You're not all in on the OTK, so it is a pivot option rather than what the deck is built around. So I hope that makes sense. We will play a couple of example games. I think after the example games, I might take a quick break. Actually, no, I'll take a quick break now, and then I'll play the example games first, actually. So golems, get ye gone. Okay, so swordcraft. So another swordcraft. Hey, it's Bruce's. Okay, so like as much as it kind of annoys me not to mulligan, because usually you want to mulligan to make sure you get a Golem Lord, but this curve is otherwise, this like hand is otherwise so good that hopefully I will draw a Golem Lord of Familiars Pact. Against Swordcraft, we should be pretty well matched. We can generally match them for... Oh, there's a Familiars Pact, excellent. So I'll start with Ultramarine Witch. Then just do Summoning Disaster turn 2, because it's always better to try and get Summoning Disasters out of your hand earlier rather than later. Because otherwise you might get them stuck with the annoying Enhance. So as I said, Ultramarine Witch you almost always want to play for the Crystallize so that the draw a card. Okay, so they're dashing duelist that they've played for just a drawing card. That's fine. That doesn't really bother me. So we play Summoning Disaster here. That summons the golem. You see, because of how Stack Addition works, that means it removes the Ultramarine Witch, so she draws a card. An additional. It is a Love Live character. It's a Love Live character cosplaying as a Cygames character. Okay. That is slightly annoying, but I can deal with that. So, given that, I want to do that. I don't want, as much as I want to summon an additional golem this turn, I kind of really need to deal with the day before next turn, so I'm going to do this, and then use that to kill him, and that to kill you. Instead, because I've got this ear that's going to sit in my hand for a long time, I don't have to worry about Undying Witches not being active, because Swordcraft is almost always going to play a follower on their turns. So my golem count is a little low, but hopefully I can probably put at least 2 into play. No, they had another ear. That's real annoying because they're giving it ambush. But I might still be okay. So what I want to do is this. This is a bit awkward because I would quite like to have things, but I really want to draw cards before doing anything else first, because if I get Outdoors Mage, I am in the fucking money. Get fucked. So here's a bit of a conundrum. If I Golem Lord this turn, I don't have the play. So I think, yeah, what I will do is I will not I will not, as much as it's kind of antithetical, because I'm trying to win on board, I really want to make sure I have Earthright 2 for the Golem Lord. And because I don't have Celestial Convergence to get sigils for no play points, I kind of want to think I'd rather make sure I, like, get this on. And hopefully I'll draw a second Golem Lord before then, but it's more important for me to, like, actually just pressure my opponent, because they're playing Swordcraft, they're playing a Rally Swordcraft deck, or they're playing Charlemagne Sword. But either way, I'm not going for the OTK, I'm going more for the board presence. So it'll only be a 4 damage Golem Lord. Ooh, that is a sad Evan. Still a little, I guess that's, so this is probably Charlemagne Sword if they're doing that, because I'm guessing they're going to play Blooming Dancer, yeah. So this is a Charlemagne deck because that's the only Evo deck that Swordcraft runs. Now the healing, interesting. So that pops out, that draws a card. So, okay, that's a Celestial Command. So yeah, I'm just going to drop the Golem Lord here. Now here's an interesting question of what should I Evo now? Or do I hold on for Evo? Because Evoing can give my opponent problems. But I think I'm gonna Evo... So if they're playing Charlemagne, so they haven't actually played Charlemagne yet. But Charlemagne, probably the defense. I'm going to Evo the Golem Lord just to make it more annoying for them to deal with. So that's not a big damage, but it is putting a lot of damage on the board. And it means if they want to say... Aha, so this is what this kind of works good against. Because they want to play Goddess of Compassion here to heal up. They're trying to stall out for a longer game. So they're doing this. I know, okay, I want to work on a OTK game plan from now on. So they had that forced, my Evo forced them to spend an Evo point that they probably really didn't want to at that point. I'll do my turn before I stretch. So given that case, I will fuse one Undying Witch, one of these Fate's Hands, because it's a bit, and yeah, the Undying Witch and the Ultramarine Witch, I think I will do. Because I would like to spend these Earthrights on the damage shield, because it will make my board annoying for them to clear. The Evo Golem. So the only kind of annoying thing right now is I don't have another Golem Lord in hand. So obviously another Goddess of Compassion is kind of like... So here's Roland the Faultless. It's an annoying fucking card. At least I don't have an... And there's Wise Discerning Professor, but you don't have an Evo point, buddy. So, unless you've got a way to recover... You do not have a way to recover that Evo point. Get fucked! Oh, that's a really good draw. So... I really wish... This was... had... I kind of wish I had this, so it's... I'm gonna... Sadly, I don't get the Evo effect here. So I kind of just need to... What are you at? Are you at 10? You are not at 10. God damn it. This is a kind of awkward situation, though, but I think I got it. I do Binding Ritual to draw a card because Fate's Hand is too expensive right now. Okay, and then we Golem Lord once. So I don't really want to spend this here because I'm trying to build up to an OTK, so yeah, I'll Golem Lord twice. One play point Fate's Hand just in case I can actually draw something that deals with this. And I'll hold on because it won't actually get me to play anything. So this does use up an Evo that I'm not too much of a fan of, but hopefully what this means, as long as I can draw something that helps me generate one more Binding Ritual, one more stack next turn. So what's my Golem counter now? My Golem counter is at 9. They are probably going to heal up to 25, which is annoying. Because currently each Golem Lord, when I play a Golem Lord for 2 play points, it will deal 11. Which is not quite enough. But I can do that 2 turns in a row because I've got 2 ears. But if they don't heal at all, and if I can draw anything that gets me a Earth Sigil into play, then I've killed them. I can show you the OTK. Okay, then they don't have the play points. That doesn't heal. They can make a wide board, but they don't have the play points to heal, which means if I can get That's not good enough. Fate Hand, save me. No, okay, this works. So I trade you. This is an important lesson. Yeah, it's fucking side games, man. So important lesson in ordering. So we play here. This now means that we don't have enough play points to play Outdoors Mage. Which means we can accelerate Outdoors Mage. So we trade that to make some board space. Then we play Outdoors Mage. It doesn't matter which of these hits because we're going to be playing. So now we have two Earth Sigils in play. We play Golem Lord. That summons 2 more golems. Our golem count is now 11. We have 2 Golem Lords. What does 11 plus 11 equal, kids? That's right, 22, baby! I'm glad I got to demonstrate the OTK with us. That is just one. That's one of the. That's one I like to say. You get some very satisfying lethals. And remember, ordering. Right, I like it is as much as I'd like to. Yeah. I think I have Greer as well. Do I have the Greer leader? Did I actually spend that money? I did spend that money. I got both of them. Well, I think Anne fits golems better. I don't know. She's more about summoning. If I was playing, when I was, I think I would bought Greer for playing more Earthright burn decks. But Earthright burn deck is kind of making a comeback, but it's not what I'm doing. But yeah, I think Anne summons her big night thing. She's usually got more about summoning magic, so I figured for a golem deck she makes more sense. But right, so there's one more deck I want to do today, so this is a bit longer than usual afternoon streams, but I do need to take a little break. There, I feel like that was a wish beyond. So I don't know if I'll be gone. I should probably go for the full 10 minutes. So yeah, I'll be back in about 10 minutes for the final of today's deck guides, where I'll be discussing another easy to play, easy-ish to play, like low, like mid-range, fast, popular, can get you climb your ladder pretty quickly. Decks on the ladder. Probably one of the most popular ones is Deckbuff Dragon, which is a deck I don't usually play, but I figured it's worth teaching because everyone fucking knows it. It's very, very common, and it performs really, really well without being too complicated. So yes, I will be right back. Be back in about 10 minutes. And then we'll get on to that. So, mwah! And we are back. And here we are. So I've lost. For the last guide of the day, we will be looking at Deckbuff Dragon. There's a deck all about training those glutes. Now there's a few variants of this deck, but like with... It used to be you always ran this deck with an Evo package, but now that we've got cards like... Now with like Thunderclaw, Dragon Rune, and Terminus Dragoon. Yeah, that is entirely the point. I thought I'd add to it with the little fake chat box as well. That makes it so this doesn't have the this version of the deck doesn't have the Evo package, so we won't really bother talking about it much. So what does Deckbuff do exactly? It is a let's just look at rand cards and kind of explain it. It is a deck that is all about buffing the cards that are in your deck. Lots of cards in this deck have the effect of giving +0, +1, or various, or maybe even, well, mostly +0, +1, or actually all of them do, to all Dragoncraft followers in your deck. And then most of them also have effects that, almost all of them have effects that trigger when they have a certain amount of defense or less. Usually, the effect is, the main primary effect is similar to this. So Militant Mermaid is a 1 play 0.11 ward. So decent enough little body. Gives 1 +0, +1 to all Dragoncraft followers in the deck. So good for playing early. But also it has 3 defense. It restores 2 defense to your leader. So it's a little bit of healing. And obviously as it gets deck buffed, is like for a ward especially, that gets very annoying for your opponent to deal with, because as the game goes on, any Militant Mermaids you play later are still going to have big fucking backsides. So I guess I just kind of like go through these cards in order, and I've explained like the core concept of the deck. It's kind of like getting your followers having high defense and then having various effects trigger off that high defense. But you mostly only buff followers that are in your deck. So first off, we have Dragonborn Striker. It is a dragon lady that play the football. If you call it soccer, I'm going to throw you in the river. It is a 1 play 0.11 storm, so base stats, she is a quick blader, but in Dragoncraft. It's also academic, which is important for this deck. So there's like a lot of all the academic cards are like deck buff focused, so they all kind of like, so the deck has a lot of them. And as the fanfare, if it has at least 5 a very simple card, if it has 5 defense, evolve it. So if you've buffed it 4 times usually, then you get that is at the minimum a 3/7. It could be higher. So just a nice little aggressive card to have. Like if you really don't want to play it as a 1/1 storm, but sometimes you might have literally no other choice. So we already looked at Militant Mermaid, kind of like explain the mechanism. This is like actually a nerf, but this card actually had to be nerfed because it used to be if it had at least 3 defense, evolve it, and that was busted. That was incredibly oppressive, and that was a time when everyone really fucking hated deck buff, and now people are only mildly annoyed by deck buff. It's not as still annoying. It's an annoying deck. I don't particularly like it, but I understand it is an important deck to teach, and it is sometimes very funny to play. Sandstorm is kind of like a weird guy. This deck list only has 1. You can have more if you feel like it. So it's a 1 play point spell that just gives +1, +0, +1 It deck buffs you once. I'll use a shorthand of saying it gives you one deck buff. But you can also play it on as an enhanced 3 to like as a board clear as well. Which is kind of nice. Like, you usually don't want. It's not that great, but it's useful to have as a tech option against wide board cards like board decks like Swordcraft and the like. And you have a Megalo Orca Rider, which is a 2-play 1 and 3. She deck buffs, and then she draws a academic follower that is not a another Megalo Orca Rider. So basically, you get another academic follower. Your academic followers are usually your best source, one of your best sources of deck buffs, and also your best payoffs from the deck buff. So it's just a good card to have to draw. And just standard, just a standard card. And she is very cute, yes. I'll show you her Evo art. She is having a lot of fun. You would have fun too if you were riding a Megalo Orca. Next is Dion, Scarlet Scion. She's a 2-play 0.21 rush. She's fanfare, deck buffs, and then she has, if she has 3 defense, you gain an empty play point, so that's how this is a ramp card, hopefully. And if it has at least 7 defense, you recover an Evo point. This is something they actually had to buff because she wasn't really seeing much places. Like, they buffed Dion and then they realized, hang on, Dragoncraft is too good, but if we nerf Dion, she's going to be useless again. So they nerfed Dragonborn Striker instead to kind of address the balance. So this is like, Dion is like early board control and ramp, and late game gives you is your Evo point recovery. So just a generally good card. Like, ideally, you don't really want to have to play this on, but it's like you might have to. She might just be sitting in your hand, and you might not be able to do anything. But you might be thinking, well, no, is it the next card? Yes, it's the next card. So the next card, I will explain this dilemma I'm about to put out to you. You might be thinking, but Kuro, if I have a bunch of cards that aren't buffed sufficiently that are in my hand, what is one of the ways that I can work around that? Because they're mostly useless. Like, I don't get my ramp from Dion, I don't get Evo Dragonborn Striker. What do I do if I have these useless, these not as efficient as they could be cards sitting in my hand? Do I just play them? Sometimes you have to, but you do have options about it. One such option is Lucky Mermaid. Lucky Mermaid is a 2-play 0.22. She's not academic, so she doesn't trigger any of the academic effects. This is important. So Megalo Orca Rider doesn't draw her. So she's fanfare, deck buffs. Good, so far so good. But Evolve, not only does she deck buff on Evolve, but she gives a double buff to all the cards in your hand. So this is how you can kind of like activate cards that otherwise you've drawn just a bit too early. You can see we run 3 of them, it's just 2 of them are animated, so I might as well show the animated. So yes, this is a very, this is like massively increases when this deck card was added, it massively increases the consistency of the deck. Because otherwise you have to be worried about too much high rolling, because if you drew too many cards, like there is other cards that also deal with it, you don't just have Lucky Mermaid, but it's like the best option for it. So evolving in Lucky Mermaid can help activate all your various breakpoints for defense. Then we've got a Dragoncraft classic, the Dragon Oracle. It's the card that ramps, and if you're in overflow, which means if you have 7 or more play points, it draws you a card. At that point, the ramp is less useful. It's Dragon Oracle, it ramps. That's just what it does. It doesn't deck buff, but ramping the deck likes ramping a little bit, so it has that. It's like, so Dragon Oracle and Dion are the only 2 ramps in the deck. It's not a deck that wants to ramp too much. It usually only wants to ramp once or twice, really. Twice, usually, is the game plan, really. But as I said, you'd prefer to ramp with Dion, but obviously you can't ramp with, usually, in fact, yeah, pretty much under any circumstances, you can't ramp with Dion on turn 2. So Dragon Oracle is usually better then. Next we have worm crafting. This is another way to deal with cards in your hand that haven't been buffed enough, because it tucks a card back into your deck. So it's a 2 play point spell, banish a card from your hand and put a copy of it into your deck, and then gives then deck buffs, and then draws 2 cards. In that order. You do have to note, though, that when the card you select for this will strip it of any current buffs. So you do have to be mindful that, like, it won't, if you have, like, a Dragonborn Striker that's been buffed 3 times, so it's at 4 defense. If you worm crafting it to send it back in the deck, it'll actually lose 2 of its deck buffs. It'll go back down to only being buffed once. So there's something to keep in mind, because it banishes it basically makes a new copy of that card, but it doesn't include any of the buffs it already has. That is an important thing to keep in mind. But it's still useful, like, it's best used on stuff that hasn't received a deck buff at all, or you just don't need it at the time. Like, say, you might want to have Aska and Shiori in your hand if you don't have as more Evo points in your hand. Because Aska and Shiori is a fairly common card you see in a lot of decks. It's 3 play point 1/1 that draws 2 cards. And it's neutral, so again, you can put it in a lot of decks. If you have this card, and your deck is sparse regardless, you could put it in filler just as card draw to keep you up tempo, and it's a good advantage for going second. So it's like, draw 2 cards. If you have more Evo points than your opponent, restore 2 defense to your leader and recover 2 plate points. So if that's usually just if you're going second, because if you play this on 4, you have 3 play points, your opponent effectively has 0. And usually in most cases, going second, you will maintain an Evo point advantage against your opponent. Sometimes you won't, like half the time you won't, I'd say, actually. So maybe not most cases. But just a generally good card, keeps you drawing cards, heals you up, and as said, if you're going first, less useful, but can still be worth using if you're playing white, but still, then it's a card you can feed to, you can just throw under worm crafting, because you're just like, I don't need this card at all, I might as well throw it back in the deck. Next is Grand Slam Trainer, who is a 3 play point 3/3 fanfare deck buff. And so again, if she has at least 5 defense, if she's been buffed twice or hit once with Lucky Mermaid's Evo effect, she summons a Hellflame Dragon. Also a Hellflame Dragon is a 4/3 rush. It also costs 2 play points, but again, that doesn't matter so much here. It can matter sometimes, but overall doesn't really matter. You're not really worried about it. If it has 7 defense, so this has been buffed by 4, you give the Hellflame Dragon Storm, so it's a 4/3 Storm, and evolves the Grand Slam Trainer, which gets at 5, and it still gets full Evo attacks. So generally a very powerful body in a card, especially once it's been buffed enough. This is usually, if you can get the good curve where you get a deck buff, you can get 2 deck buffs before you draw this card on turn 3. You playing it on turn 3, so you have a 3/5 and a 4/3 rush, is a very strong play. It's one of the times whenever it happens to me, I'm just like, fuck's sake, because it's very hard to deal with a 3/5 that early in the game. But yeah, so just a strong, solid card, puts 2 bodies on the board, and again, Storm, so helps you actually kill your opponent. Next, this is not a deck buff card, but it just kind of pairs well nicely with it. So this is Sunderclaw Dragon Newt. It is a 3 play point 2/3 with Bane, which isn't that surprising, but if the Overflow is active, it evolves for free, and it goes up to a 4/5. It still, of course, has Bane, but when it's evolved, it has a strike effect, which means when it attacks an enemy follower, it triggers. Instead, if it attacks face, it doesn't trigger, but you probably won't be attacking face with this card unless it's been stuck around for a turn because it's now Storm. But strike, put a Dragon's Handspur in your hand and change its cost to 1. So this is what helps propel the deck into a more aggressive variant than it used to be. Because Dragon's Handspur is normally it is a 4 play point spell. And it deals 3 damage to an enemy, draw a card if Overflow is active for you. It does have many cute girls. Hello, dear hero, and thank you. Thank you that I can encourage. But like, it's a pretty good time. Like, I think currently one of the reasons why I kind of like decided to go back into doing these doing like teaching of it is I think the current meta is pretty good, even if like the Shadowverse New Worlds or whatever it's called is on the horizon somewhere in summer. I don't think it's worth like enjoying Shadowverse. I wouldn't say spend money on it, but I'd say if you want to play it, you can play it, and like some things will still carry over to the next game, and it'll still be like fundamentally the same game. Like, it'll still be a very similar game. So like learning Shadowverse now will help you. Will still be relevant to Shadowverse 2. It'll just be slightly different. But yeah, so like this card is just really, really solid. It doesn't like have any direct benefits from having it from the deck buff effects. Like, it doesn't have any if it has so and so much defense and effect triggers, but just having a Rush Bane with a large defense can be very annoying for opponent, because obviously that means it can she can trade a lot better with she can like value trade with things and survive, which then your opponent has to deal with this Bane follower on the board, which can be pretty annoying. And the Dragon's Handspur is, because she makes it really fucking good, because that's a 1 play point, deal 3 damage to your opponent, and draws a card usually, because you usually never play Thunderclaw Dragon Newt until after Overflow. Like, you can manually evo it if you really have to, but you probably don't want to play. Even if you do that, you usually don't want to play Dragon's Handspur outside of Overflow, unless you, again, really need to. Like, you need to use it as removal, or you just really need to rush down your opponents. You're in a really tight damage race with your opponent. So yeah, not a deck buff card. Some variant, like evolved variants of deck buff, don't usually include this, but this is, I prefer this more aggressive variant of the deck. So it's got 2 Thunderclaw Dragons. So you probably don't want to go to full 3, just because it's like again, it's not a deck buff card itself, so it can like dilute the deck that much. Another not a deck buff card, but works really well with deck buff because it's a Bane follower, is Terminus Dragoon. He's still got it. This is the advanced version of Aldous, and he's still got his fucking massive boob plate. Jesus Christ. So he's in this incarnation, he is a 3 play point 3/2 rush with Bane. And a very nice fanfare. So his fanfare, this is the base fanfare, so you don't have to be an overflow for it. It subtracts 1 from the cost of 2 random Dragonclaw followers in your hand. You can kind of try and like aim at this at certain followers by not having that money in your hand, but usually it's just good to just play this guy, because you'll usually get something, you'll usually discount something useful. Not that many bad targets in hand unless you've been holding on to like unbuffed Dragonborn Striker or something in your hand, and even then that's like a 0.11 Storm. That's not terrible. And if Overflow is active, you gain Storm, so that's just quite nice. That means it's a 3 damage Storm at the very least, or you can evolve him for a 5 damage Storm, the 3 play points, and you get basically 2 of those play points back off 2 other Dragoncraft followers in your hand, which may lead to some spicy turns. Now we have the kingpin of the deck. The man, myth, the legend, Coach Joe, Fiery Counselor. He's a bastard. I hate him. So he's a 5 play point 5/5, but we'll get to his body in a second, because the first thing know about him is his Crystallize. And he's similar to Worm Crafting. He's another card that can tuck cards into your deck, but again, because he banishes it and puts a copy, it strips that card of any of its deck buffs. So don't use it on cards that are already buffed up pretty well, unless you really want to. But you crystallize him as an amulet, count down 1, tuck a card into your deck, and then puts a copy of himself back in your deck, so you get a Coach Joe in your deck. And then deck buffs. And then if you banished an academic card, he gains Last Words, draw 2 cards. So you want to make sure you're always banishing an academic. You're always tucking in a academic card with Coach Joe. Like, if you don't have any other options and you really need a 1 play point deck buff, you can, but it's not a great idea. No, it is not. It's only infinite if you keep crystallizing it. Because if you play it, you don't get any. He doesn't recur back into your deck because you can play him for 5 play points, and this is how. And you want to play him for 5 play points because this is how he deals a lot of damage. So he's got 2 kind of like stages to effects. So he's a 5/5. He's a 5/5 ward, which is nice. Obviously, he'll also, at this point, by the time you actually play him, he'll be deck buffed pretty considerably. So, fanfare, if the total defense of all allied followers, including himself, is at least 20, you deal 5 damage to all enemies. So that's their entire board and their face. So that's a decent chunk of damage. And again, that includes himself. So, considering the time you've probably deck buffed your deck. Sorry, my throat's going a bit sore. Yeah, I've really been talking too much. Maybe I won't do 3 deck guides in one stream all the time. It's too much talking, I think. But yeah, so this is where he kind of like pairs well with the kind of like cheaper followers like Dragonborn Striker, who again also can get that free Evo defense, so she can count for a lot. Or just stuff that's stuck around on the board because all your stuff at that point has massive arses, so it's kind of annoying to get rid of. But yeah, so that's 5 damage. That's a decent chunk of damage, but that's not enough. What you can do is you can evolve them, and on Evo, if Coach Joe himself has at least 11 defense after Evo, that's important. You deal 7 damage directly to the enemy leader, so Coach Joe triggering both effects on his Evo is 12 damage to the opponent's face on his own. And that's how you kill your opponent. So that's at least 11 defense after Evo. So basically the break point for getting that effect off from him is you want him to be, that is effectively deck buffed by 4, so it'd be a 5/9 before Evo, and then it'd be a 7/11, like the Combini chain or whatever, or supermarket chain, corner store chain. I don't know. It's not. We don't have them in the UK. Regardless, then that'll trigger. But obviously, more is better because that means you need less of a board to trigger his fanfare as well. So Coach Joe's how you do. So you early Coach Joes, you crystallize. Remember that even if the Coach Joe is deck buffed, when you crystallize him, those deck buffs are going to go away. So he's going to go back into your deck, and he's going to be a 5/6 because he gets put back into the deck before he applies his own deck buff effect. He's going to be a 5/6. That's a 5/6 Coach Joe you're putting back in your deck. So you will need to build that Coach Joe back up. But obviously, when you're playing it very early on, which is mostly when you want to play him, that's going to be pretty good. And again, you want to make sure you banish academic cards, because otherwise he does not draw you 2 cards afterwards as his last words. He literally does not have any last words on the amulet, so the countdown just expires and it's just gone. So you don't want to play it without an academic follower. So that's kind of like the main. Next cards are 2 very cards that do a very similar job, but and I'm going to regret all this talking tomorrow. It's Heaven Scale Dragon. It is not a card that gives deck buffs, but it is a card that benefits greatly from deck buffs. So it is a 5-player point 5/3 ward. With fanfare, give -X/-X to all enemy followers. X equals this follower's defense. And if X is at least 5, draw 2 cards. So this said, so on base, it just -3/-3, which is fine, it's playable. But obviously you want this deck buffed by at least 5/5, so that's -5, at least -5/-5 to the enemy board and drawing 2 cards. So it's a ward, so it blocks your opponent. It's just a very solid board clear and ward to help you draw cards to then advance your game plan and slow down and save you from your opponent beating your face. So a fairly simple card, doesn't deck buff, it doesn't actually buff your deck as well, so you do have to keep in mind if you've been having a bit of a like anemic deck buffs in the early game, that this might not actually help you, especially if you draw cards. Then if you're drawing cards, you've probably already deck buffed at least twice, so you're probably fine. Like deck buffing at least twice is when you start popping off, so it's really good. And then finally, we have the most annoying card in all of Dragoncraft. Made even more annoying in this deck. She has no direct synergy with deck buff. She does not deck buff her cards. She does not benefit like in any special way. It's simply the fact that Drazael with a fat ass is real fucking annoying. So she's a 7-player point 5/8 ward. She has Accelerate 1, draw a card, which is useful if you have her in your early hand and you have nothing better to do. But also, she has a fanfare, gives -5 to all enemy followers, so she's a board clear. Great. And she restores 5 defense to your leader. That's annoying, that's a heal as well. And she can't be destroyed by effects. So most common ways to deal with a big fucking follower don't fucking work. You have to work through her entire gigantic ass because she's 8 defense base. And you've buffed, by the time you actually play her, you've buffed her up a lot. And your opponent probably evils her to be extra annoying. Thankfully, this card is rotating out in less than a month, so we'll see if deck buff actually survives losing her. Yeah, like, compared to like a lot of earlier games, there's been a lot of power creep, but it's at this current point in time, the game is actually pretty fun. And I think when Asphalt rotates out, the game's going to, I don't know if the game's going to slow down that much actually, but I think it will in some cases. I'm trying to think of what condemned cards. Ouroboros, that's an old, I can't even remember what Ouroboros exactly. Ouroboros is like the Dragoncraft card that just goes back into your hand, doesn't it? Like, yeah, I don't think there is any deck, even in Unlimited, that would work around Ouroboros. It was never considered particularly great. Like, it'd probably run, it would probably be a Resurgent Phoenix deck, but I'm not sure you'd be particularly successful with it, I'm afraid. But it might be fun. But yeah, I don't think there's a way to, there's a particularly good deck built around Ouroboros specifically. Maybe you can do some weird nonsense with Relic Dragon, I don't know. But yeah, so that's deck buff. It is all about, again, healing doesn't get you that much far and it's a bit too slow for Unlimited. Unlimited's a very fast format because you have all the nonsense. I don't know, I'm not that much of an Unlimited player, but I don't know if Dragoncraft and Unlimited actually does that well apart. I think only the more aggressive Dragon variants work that well. But yeah, so that's deck buff as a whole, and I will now demonstrate it in games. Hopefully, like I think there's just better. There's better things to abuse in Dragoncraft than Ouroboros, I think. Okay. Like this is like, I'm not ready to talk about like other kind of like demonstrate other decks. I'm mostly talking about rotation decks and like decks I've played. So sorry if I can't help you that much on finding weird unlimited decks because I don't really play unlimited that much. I merely play rotation. Okay, so against Shadowcraft. So it's... Okay, so we want to pitch this Heaven Scale. We want to keep Coach Joe and Megalorca. Okay, so as I said, as much as I'd like to pitch this Oscar and Shiori, I think it's better to just pitch this other Coach Joe, because then I actually get the Last Words effect to draw 2 cards next turn. I'm keeping Megalorca right over because I want to play it next turn. Okay, so this is Burial, right? This is it's Helio Shadow. This is a poor matchup for me. If I do not kill them real damn fast, I am in a lot of trouble. So, could Wormcrafting the Heaven Scale because it's too early? Yeah, I think I will. I think I will Wormcrafting the Heaven Scale here, rather than Megalorca Rider. And then I drew another Heaven... I drew the fucking... Wait, that was... That's the Heaven Scale that just got put in back in the deck. God fucking damn it. Okay. Fuck my life. Like, because if it was a different Heaven Scale, it'd be a 5/5 because I'd played 2 deck buffs by then. But no, the only way that could be a 5/4 Heaven Scale is it was exactly the one that just got shuffled back into my deck. That is just fucking stupid, man. But yeah, they're just gonna do a bunch of nonsense, and I just want to kind of beat them down before they can do this. Yeah, Crystallize was probably not a thing. It wasn't. And then Crystallize is just, you can play this card as an amulet for reduced cost. So there's various effects, some of them bad, some of them aren't OP. Some of them are. It's not always the same effect. Okay, so... I'm gonna just... I think I'm just gonna Sandstorm here. Oh wait, I forgot Sandstorm hits my board! Fuck, I'm stupid. Oh, I keep forgetting Sandstorm hits everything. It's not a card I play on 3 for that much. I missed out on 4 damage. That's probably lost me the game. Like, this is a bad matchup because they can abuse the fact I want to play big followers very easily. They're not healing this turn. I thought when they were playing the Grave Lord Knight, they probably would have healed. I guess they didn't have enough shadows for it. What are you gonna reanimate something? Have they burial righted Helio yet? Yeah, they have. Oh, that's mint. They're just getting a body, I guess. I see. Oh, I had another spectral. Okay, so there's Helio buried. So they can reanimate it. But they haven't had that much. They haven't had enough fusion, so we can't. Oh no, now they've got. Fuck, they're at 6 fusions already. They got a Gilgamesh on turn 4. Fuck my life. Yeah, that's Gilgamesh. Oh, that's gross. That was a Spy X Family collab card. What the fuck do I do here? Do I just... I have to fucking just... I am in such a bad position. I think I've lost this. I think, regardless of my performance, I'm pretty sure I've lost this game. Because that was such a fast Gilgamesh. Like, I do have 2 fat Drizzales if I can survive until turn 7. Making a Grave Adjudicator. But yeah, that's an alt-art version of, because like they do collab alt-art versions of cards. Like, my only real hope at this point is for my opponent to fuck up, because it is very easy to fuck up Helio Shadow. They did not have removal for my Heaven Scale Dragon. That is interesting. Okay. That's good, that's damage. I'm gonna... She doesn't deck buff now. So I think rather than Lucky Mermaid here, I'm gonna just draw cards. And pray that I'm not dead this turn. I have no real way to stop myself from dying this turn. There's no point spending an evo point here. But they do have OTKs. And like, I went 14, so there are a lot of ways to kill me. But maybe they don't have the cards to kill me. I'm gonna raw play that Helio. No, they are not. They got something else to play Helio with. If they don't kill me this time, I have a shot, but I'm not confident. Okay, they're just role-playing it. They're just going to role-play a Helio. Poisoned Apple, so they get a second Helio. Trade out with 2 of my followers. They get 2 Gilgameshes, evil one of the Gilgameshes, and I die. Yeah. Yeah. Really not much I could have done about that. This is a really, especially when they get a Gilgamesh on turn fucking 4. If I had any kind, if I'd drawn any kind of healing to play that turn, I probably would have. If I had been able to heal by any amount, I would have survived. But I didn't draw any healing, so let's go again and hopefully not run into the worst possible matchup on the ladder. Like, Helio Shadow might be OP. It is one of the strongest decks on the meta, and you see it a lot in tournaments. But I can't play it. I'm really bad at playing it. It requires you to think in really strange ways, and it's really easy to fuck up. Okay. So, pop you back, keep Militant, keep 2 deck buffers. So, the Dragonpawn Striker is unfortunate, but instead, it's a card I can keep in for like Coach Joe. Tax relative with it. We've got our primary 1-drop, which is Militant Mermaid. The question is, do I want to ramp on turn 2? Because with this hand, ramping on turn 2 doesn't actually get me much, but I might as well. Okay, this could be literally any Haven deck. Yeah, I think I'll ramp. I probably should have played Megler Orca Rider, actually. I don't think I get any benefit really from ramping that turn. Would have been, yeah, it would have been better to Megler Orca Rider. Well, it doesn't make that much of a difference. I might as well play that. I'm not going to need that for the thing, so I'm just going to play this as a 1-1 at this point. And just be aggressive. This is not a great start though. That's real bad. Okay, that's real good. Phew. Pulled. That is in fact the best possible card I could have drawn in that situation. Yeah, see? Because they didn't have, Okay. So that Coach Joe isn't... So what I'm gonna do here... So I kind of want to just bump that out of the way without hitting with it. I'm gonna keep this in because I want them to like accidentally... So I'm gonna start with and what I'm gonna do it in this order. Yeah. So use an Evo here, which isn't great, but and she's not quite buffed enough. But I want to get the one-cost Dragon's Hand Spur in hand for later. And then I want to Coach Joe the Dragonborn Striker that doesn't have that much. It's like any Coach Joe that doesn't have at least like 9 defense isn't usually worth keeping in hand. And then we worm crafting this Askren Shuri because we probably won't ever play it. And it's hopefully it goes back in the deck, never to be seen again. And that is a good pair of cards. Like what I'm hoping my opponent does is just leave this Megalorca Rider on the battlefield, so I've got 3 more defense on the... Unless I... Like, I'll trade it off if I need the board space. Okay, so they're prepping for next turn, so... Yeah. I would like to draw... preferably... that's perfect. So now we play this Militant Mermaid. The only problem is this one of these survives, but at least I deal with another one. Which is kind of annoying. And do I play? I want to do as much damage as possible, really. So we can't deal with this 7-2, which is kind of annoying because it's got ambush and we don't have any but we can it doesn't matter because we can just kill them. I was fretting over killing the 7-2 without realizing, hang on, I just have lethal. So I'll do one more game and then I'd say that's enough for today. So that was like, because yeah, my opponent didn't have a great answer for clearing my board. And also they just had poor draws, really. They did not get things. I'll do one more game of deck buff, and then I think that'll be it because I would like to go make dinner. I'm getting hungry. Forte! Thank you for the follow, dear hero. I'm glad you're having fun regardless. Like, I am kind of this. Okay, so... I'll put some of the Core Dragon away, but... Militant Mermaid with Worm Crafting and just tuck this Grand Slam trainer. Bit of Worm Crafting, so I don't have to worry too much about that. I'm gonna Worm Crafting first so that now everything in my deck is at least active on 3. So now I've got... I could ramp with the Dion if I want. I could... Okay, so it's condemned... Golems went pretty well. Okay, so this is a bit awkward because I do kind of want to play this Dion, but I don't have another academic card to feed to this Coach Joe. Because ideally, what I'd want to do is play this Dion and Coach Joe, but that's not actually gonna help me any. And you know what? Yeah, I only played one Golem game, but it did have a pretty good ending. So you can check it out in the highlights. I did, but kind of like, I only did one golem game, so I'm gonna do this and hope I draw an academic card. Okay. There, and then, even though it is highly deck buffed to Megalor, the deck buffs on Megalor Rider don't really matter so much, so I can happily toss that. And that guarantees me cards. But yeah, no. I managed to do 20 to kill an opponent from 22 in a single turn with golems, so that was pretty good. So I got to demonstrate long reach OTK. This is good cards on the board. Like, I don't really need to worry too much about the Evo effect here, so I'm just going to play Lucky Nothing in this hand really needs any more deck buffs, so I'm just going to play her for deck buffs as a 2/5. $11 plus 11 is 22. J Phantom with last minute Gary mode because I don't know if this, because this is the last game. Okay, so yeah, they're playing Condemned Portal, which is honestly a bit scary. They can do a lot, it can do a lot of nonsense, but it's not particularly consistent. Okay, so I will... Yeah, they play Militant Mermaid first to get the more buffs in my deck before I draw cards. And then Heavenscale Dragon. I don't have much of a wide board, so it is a bit of a waste, but I've got a Drazale coming up. And then I might as, because I've got a Dion on hand who's got enough defense to get my Evo point back, I need to spend it so it's not wasted. So hopefully what I can do is they'll spend an Evo point this turn. Yeah, that's fine. Like, they'll heal a bit back, but... Ooh, they've got the tech! But that's... here's the thing. Condemned Portal, outside of their condemned cards, can only run one copy of each card. So now I know they don't have another Angel of Darkness, which is the most scary card I have to deal with against this deck. So I've got a few options here. I think I am just going to go with the aggressive option. So tech is against deck buffs, because Angel of Darkness, when he evolves, he destroys all enemy followers that have had their attack or defense increased by effects. So, and playing deck buff, all of your followers have had their defense increased by effects. So he kills your board all the time, always. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play that, and I might. This is a good chance to play Coach Joe. He clears the board. He deals 12 damage. And he just sets up a real... He's just big and obnoxious. And if I'm lucky, I can draw... Okay. That's annoying, though. Judith is annoying. Lucky get! It was a 50-50 coin flip, and they got the high roll. Ah well, c'est la vie. Oh, they're running Chaos Conflagrate. I guess you can run Chaos Conflagrate after playing Cutthroat. That makes sense, yeah. But because he puts not 3 copies of a non-condemned card in your deck, why is he playing a second copy of Cutthroat now? Is he that scared of my 2/8? What? Why did he do that? Okay, so I'm going to start with drawing cards. And... I'm going to do this. And then this. And then this to draw another card, I think, rather than knocking off. So I've got this Dragon's Hand Spur mainly to knock off the damage shield they've got on, but since I'm not killing this turn, it's not worth, like, since I'm not pushing any more damage this turn, it's not worth knocking off their damage shield, because it means they can this means that if they try and reapply it with another Judith, they so they're going to heal a lot, which is a problem. So I assume they took the heal from that. So this is a yeah, they're probably drawing cards from that, I'd imagine. Yeah. Or maybe they just decided to prep a removal. So that's another Coach Joe, but I don't want to play Coach Joe right now because he won't things. But I can push a lot of damage this turn though, so I might as well. Yeah. Here's the problem, the longer the game goes on, it's going to be more problems. I want a Dragon's Hand Spur to remove their shit. To remove their damage shield, and then I would like to Grand Slam Trainer to get a bunch of stats on the board. And another Storm. And then Coach Joe to clear their board, deal damage. And then deal another 7 damage and hope they can't. And we knock them down to 4. The question is, will I be able to kill them next turn? I should have just cycled this Drizael. She's not gonna win me the game if I actually play her for her body. I should have used that 1 play point to actually play her. Oh well. It's like they have healing, but they don't have like loads of healing. Like they've used up a bunch of their healing because they used up Oceanus. They've used 1 Judith, so they've still got 2 others left in the deck. They've used 1 Smeltlet Bodyguard. The problem is they don't actually have a lot of ways to actually kill me, because unless they're sitting on a Cutthroat and Dune Surfer in hand, because they've played 2 Cutthroats already. And that does not tutor, because you played Chaos Conflagrate. Okay, so they're using that. Okay. That's fine, actually. I mean, I guess it clears the board, because it can do that. So if I can get any, like... that's lethal. They're dead. Because that clears their board. Oh, they're super dead. Get fucked. This is a bit overkill, but boom. Don't you love giving your opponent, all your opponent's followers, -12, -12? She does. Spinaria is very sad. But look how happy! Look how happy Ifeni is. She's a phoenix, not a chicken. So I hope that demonstrated these videos. I probably, given how long this block took way longer on stream than I'd planned. I probably won't do... I'm glad that was an on-stream battle. I probably won't do 3 decks again for this. If I ever do this again, I'll probably split it up, just do 2 decks, because this took way too long. I'm tired, my throat is hurt, and I'm really hungry. But I said I'd do 3 decks, so I'm doing 3 decks. So now that I know that it takes roughly over an hour to do the deck list and a few games, I'll probably chunk it down to only doing like 2 deck guides a stream whenever I next do this. I don't know when I'm going to next do this. Anyway. Swoosh. Phoenix is just a chicken that comes pre-fried. I'll be careful about saying that. So yeah, I hope that has taught you all. I have to wait out this one. So just to reiterate, because as I said, a lot of people are were not, for those who weren't here. The big fancy announcement I have is that Kuro 1.0, my original 3D model using the design created by Ishmi Papa, is in production. When will it be finished? I don't know, but it's gotten started after many delays. It's supposed to be like there's like life happens. I'm not gonna begrudge Happy Packer, but she sent me the very early drafts, which is basically a very slightly edited base Vroid model. Right, so let's raid. Oh yeah, I'll raid my good friend because it's what I want to read. We'll raid my good friend Lily, who's playing a very fun RPG called Metal Max, which is an RPG where you drive tanks, and it's very cool. But yeah, maybe it's being nepotism to raid my friends, but I don't care. It's the stream I want to watch. And I'm really fucking tired. I want to go make dinner. So yes, I shall see you all. So next stream, hopefully, if I'm not dying, I am feeling a lot better than I was previous few days because I'm taking care of myself a bit better, will be the long-awaited Ring Fit Adventure stream. So look forward to that. That'll be a short stream. Bye. That'll be on Sunday. But it'll also be the first stream I get to try out my new old capture card, so that'll be fun. Anyway, bye.